try to keep us on schedule, even though we're 25 minutes late already, but I'm going to do my best. So, so the first item on the agenda is ABSAF. Yeah, go for it.
Thank you, and good evening. At this time, I'd like to ask Heather Hare, the outgoing president of ABSAF, and I know that she has some folks with her to come forward. Very briefly, for members of our community and our audience who may not exactly know what ABSAF is, ABSAF stands for the Acton-Boxborough Student Activities Fund. It is a nonprofit organization, and if you've had the chance to become familiar with their work, as I have, you will quickly learn that they have a long history here in Acton-Boxborough of supporting the fantastic activities that we have throughout our district. They have certainly pursued their goal of developing well-rounded children, and to that end, helping promote their own self-esteem. Since its inception in 1981, ABSAF has donated well over $1 million to the Acton-Boxborough Regional Schools, and they certainly are realizing their goal each and every year. With that, I will turn over to Heather.
Thank you so much. Good evening. As Dr. Brand just said, I'm Heather Hare. I'm the outgoing president. Is it not on? Okay, thank you. I'm joined by Linda Ahern. She's our incoming president, Molly Hare, Thomas Scripps, and Caroline Leverud. As you may know, Acton-Boxborough Student Activities Fund is a unique board within our community made up of both students and adult board members. Each student volunteer serves for a board term of 2 years. Our students partner with the adults at monthly meetings, build awareness within our community, and fundraise a significant amount of money that we donate back to the school district. This is done through direct sales of our ABSAF Pass, an email campaign, a direct mailing, and we end our campaign with our annual phone-a-thon held in the fall. To share some more information about how we do these things, I'd like to introduce Caroline Leverud. Caroline just graduated and will be on her way to Quinnipiac University in the fall to pursue a degree in physical therapy. She has been a leader amongst our student board members for 2 years. She's taken on leadership roles with subcommittees on our board. She served her 2 years as an active monthly board member, always contributing to our conversations, and has done so in a very humble manner. She's a great example of a leader who leads by example. She was also the recipient of one of our 2 ABSAF scholarships that was presented last week, along with Jacqueline Hickey, and they were acknowledged for their leadership roles. So I'll turn it over to Caroline.
Each year, our board works within our community to raise funds, which in turn we release to you to be used as you see appropriate by the junior high and the high school for student activities. We constantly look at our means to raise money. We incorporate social media sites to provide communication around building awareness, and we discuss options that we think could be helpful and innovative. It is our hope that through our efforts we are able to offset the cost for students and their families, while at the same time helping to contribute to the activities that make our community so special.
So next, Thomas Scripps will present. He also played a key role in our monthly meetings for the past 2 years. I also very much appreciated when I announced to the board that we needed some students to present. He was the first to raise his hand, so I appreciate that. Both of these students are looked up to by their peers and will indeed be missed on the board this coming fall.
Through the efforts that Ms. Hare and Caroline discussed, ABSAF has donated nearly $600,000 to the Acton-Boxborough School District since 2007 alone. Tonight, all of us on the board are pleased to present a check in the amount of $72,000. We are proud of everyone that has served on the board, their dedication to the AB community, and their hard work through the years to make this incredible donation possible. We are also very thankful to the community members who have generously donated to ABSAF to support our fellow students and this gift. We are always looking for individuals who wish to help out, either through full ABSAF board membership or volunteering at the phone-a-thon. We hope to see even more students and families get involved so that we can continue to succeed. So once again, we are pleased to present this donation, and we are all looking forward to working with you in the coming years. Thank you.
So thank you so much. We will present this to you now. And as Thomas just indicated, I just want to reiterate, and this is it's a significant check. We're always so proud to be able to come and present it to you. And it is really just a contribution from so many in this wonderful town. So we really appreciate everyone's donations, no matter what amount, and it really leads to such a significant amount to all of us. So thank you.
Move to approve with gratitude.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. We have a number of warrants to sign tonight. I'll read the list for the record. 17-024 on 6/1/17 in the amount of $1,077,617.45. 17-025 PR dated June 8th, 2017 in the amount of $506,198.54. Student activities, number 17-024 BL dated June 1st, 2017 in the amount of $620. And then the payroll gross P-1725 dated June 8th, 2017 in the amount of $2,341,383.51 for a total of $3,925,819.50. I have another one. And then number 17-024 PR from May 25th, 2017 in the amount of $1,034,812.43 from Student Activities Fund 17-024SH dated May 25th, 2017 in the amount of $34,143.64, and the payroll gross P-1724 dated 5/25/17 in the amount of $2,554,877.99 for a total of $3,623,834.06. Okay. We also have minutes from the school committee meetings on May the 30th, 2017, May 24th, 2017, and May 15th, 2017. And then do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
Move to approve.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is the open meeting law complaint, and I'm going to ask Beth to take over to explain this.
That all again? Okay, I'm sorry. So the first open meeting law complaint was received on May 26th. It was asking for open meeting minutes of April 26th executive session. I sent them to the gentleman that requested them on the same day, May 26th, and the state attorney general sent us a letter of closure on May 30th saying that the complaint was closed. The second open meeting law complaint was received on May 26th. It was asking for open meeting minutes of the May 2nd executive session. I sent him those minutes on the same day, May 26th. There was a second question, second part of the open meeting law complaint where he was asking, the gentleman was asking for when the separation agreement would be voted in open meeting. That ratification vote is going to happen tonight, and I will respond to the gentleman tomorrow with the draft letter that's in your packet.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Okay, so next on our agenda, recommendation to ratify, confirm, and approve the separation and release agreement between the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Committee and the Superintendent, signed by Dr. Mary Brolin and Dr. Glenn Brand on May 17th, 2017. This item is a legally required vote in an open meeting to ratify the agreement that has already been signed. Do we have a motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, this is the time in our meeting when This is the time in our meeting when we allow public participation. We ask that, this is where any member can come up and speak on anything that is not already an agenda item. We ask that the public It's our policy to limit comments to 2 minutes per person. Is there anyone here that would like to get up and speak? If you could just raise your hand so I can get a sense of the timing. Just one? Okay. Two, okay. Two, okay. So please come up to the podium so that we can hear you, so that the cameras can capture you.
My name is Alan Nitschelm, publisher of Acton Forum. I know I only have 2 minutes. I have quite a few questions to ask, but in 2 minutes I can't, so I'll just ask a couple, and then I'll come back some other time and ask some more. I have questions to ask about the 2013-2014 superintendent search process. Bridget Bieber, who is still serving on the school committee now, was the chairperson of the superintendent search committee in 2013, as well as the chair of the Boxborough School Committee. So I'd like her to answer these questions. I'm sorry, it's going to be tough for you to keep time while I'm asking you questions, so I apologize. Ms. Bieber, back in 2014, I asked you about the search process as part of a series of articles in Acton Forum. Let me read what you wrote about my question and your response. When asked, quote, when asked whether other job descriptions were used or reviewed in order to create Actons, Bridget Bieber, chair of the Superintendent Search Committee, said, quote, the advertisement was developed with a search firm. I don't recall specifically looking at any other district's advertisements. If I did look at any other district's ads, I don't have copies. She confirmed that it was the school committee's job to write the ad and job requirements, and it was the subcommittee's job to screen applicants. I will note that neither the advertisement nor the online job posting, both of which listed certain qualifications, mentioned any specific degree qualifications. Yet the search in 2008-2009, which hired Dr. Mills, did list a master's degree as a requirement. So my two questions are, first, was the 2013-2014 Superintendent Search Committee that you chaired working under the impression that a master's degree was or was not required of candidates who applied? And question two is this, how many applicants total applied for the position of superintendent, and how many lacked a master's degree? Thank you.
Yes, go
Shouldn't
ahead.
questions be directed to the chair?
Typically, yes. I'm happy to defer to Bridget if you would like to answer this, but you don't have to.
So, Alan, we're talking 3-some years ago. With respect to the second question, how many people applied, I don't remember. I really don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at the records, which I don't even have anymore. And with respect to the first question, I don't remember what the subcommittee assumed. We used the charge that was given by the school committee, and we looked at all of the applicants under the guise of that charge. So,
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other public comments?
Hi, Jennifer Brown, Summer Street, Acton. Just a quick question. I don't understand what your policy is in terms of emails, in terms of responding, in terms of reading. If I send an email, I feel like it's kind of crossed the event horizon into a black hole. And I know that they might be attached to packets or whatever, but I don't have a sense of what's going on. So I was just hoping for some clarification on that. Thank you.
Typically, we try to respond to emails within, what is it, Beth, is it 5 days, 10 days? Yeah, within 5 days. It depends on what the question is. Some emails that are responded to very quickly, and some of them we have to, consult other experts, administrators, and we have to wait for them to get back to us.
So I've sent a couple emails in the last couple of weeks, nothing, no automatic response, no sense of anything. So
right.
It would just be nice if there were at least some sort of general response.
Absolutely. I'll go back and I'll take a look and I'll try
Okay.
to see what happened there.
Thank
and
you.
Get back to you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Moving on. The master plan school building project update.
That should come up in just a second.
So you're timing us too.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Marie Altieri. I'm the Deputy Superintendent. Mary Brolin and I are going to present the report of the District Master Plan Review Committee, the DMPRC, which has been working over the last several months, and we're just here to represent a large group from the committee, and you'll see who's on it in a minute. So this is the charge of the DMPRC. So as you know, we had a long process with a consultant, Doran Whittier, that did a Phase 1 and a Phase 2 capital study of the district. The charge of our committee, which Mary chaired, was to take all of that, review those reports. Those reports included a list of 6 possible options for building projects related to the Douglas, Gates, and Conant Elementary Schools, and to gather community feedback and make a recommendation to the school committee as to which of those projects to take off the table, to eliminate, and which to move forward. This is the group. We had several administrators who were non-voting members. We had teachers, we had parents, we had board members from both communities. All right, so the process was that we reviewed the reports. We went in depth into a couple of different grade configuration models that were included in some of the recommended options. So the Early Childhood Center and a middle school option. So through the Doran Whittier master planning process, where we had visioning, and the visioning groups were 80 or so community members, teachers, parents, etc., administrators. There was a lot of feedback there about the Early Childhood Center option and a middle school option. So we went through that, we looked at research, and we came up with a couple of flyers to talk about pros and cons of those grade configuration potential changes, as well as frequently asked questions and a full presentation on the options, the models. We had the boards with diagrams of each of the options and so on. We put together a forum presentation and had significant outreach to the community to schedule forums for people to come and learn about the projects, and we developed an extensive survey to get feedback. So the outreach, we had Christina and Mary were the presenters, at each of the forums, and Christina did a video of the entire presentation. We had an extensive website with all of the materials, including the video and the survey, diagrams, and so on. So we were hoping to reach as many people as we could through as many different channels as possible. Literally channels, right? There were 12 forums in Acton and Boxborough, different times of the day. You know, the forums, we had anywhere from 10 to 30 people attend. We probably averaged about 20, which at the beginning we were kind of thinking kind of small turnout. But 20, 25 people, 15 people all listening in depth to those options and able to ask as many questions as they had. It was about a 25-minute presentation, and the forum was an hour and a half long. So we got a lot of feedback and questions and discussion and so on. So I think we all agree that they were really valuable, and this was a pretty good method for gathering feedback from a cross-section of the community. All right, so then the survey, you can see the video had 178 views, and again, we had the 12 forums. Mary's going to go into the survey response rate and data from the survey, and then we'll have the recommendations.
So a lot of folks filled out the survey online. We had the online option. If you were at a forum, you could leave and go do it online, or if you watched the online video. So 59% of the surveys out of 266 came through online measures and 41% from the forum. We looked at a bunch of different characteristics of the respondents. So this first one is by residents, and let's see, 3 out of 5 respondents were from Acton, 11% were from Boxborough, and then 26% were from other communities, so that would be the teachers who responded for the most part. We looked at roles that they had in the district, and for this question, people could answer multiple roles, so it doesn't add to 100%, it adds to more. So 3 out of 5 of our respondents were parents or guardians, 45% were employees of the district, and 10% were other town members, people who didn't have kids in the school anymore or didn't have kids, people who worked in town and on town boards. Looking at age of the children, again, this is a multiple response. People can answer in multiple categories. So about 1 out of 4 respondents had children who were age 5 and under, and 40% were 6 to 10. So overall, we have 66% who are in that, have young children in the age group that would be affected by the building project. But we also had 22% of the respondents who had children 11 to 13 and 20% who were 14 to 18, their children. By schools, we had the largest proportion came from, let me get this right because the color I have, the version I have isn't in color, from the high school, 21%, and then that's followed by the Douglas School at 19%. But you can see across here that all of the schools were represented. One of the things we wanted to get information on were kind of the features of the different option, because when we go through the building process, there are things that may change given geographic circumstances, given funding circumstances, giving best practices, all of those things. So we wanted to see how the community was reacting to specific features. So these are the features we asked about. 3 out of 5 people responding supported a single school, and 3 out of 5 supported a twin school. 18% supported a triple school. 38% supported an early childhood center, and 39% said they wanted to maintain the preschools the way they are. So when I say supported, we asked a 5-point scale of how much they favor, and so these are people who somewhat favor or somewhat or strongly favor. So I didn't count the neutrals in this or the people who did not favor. The 40% supported the middle school option. 41% were interested or favored 6 school programs, which is what we currently have, and 41% also supported dropping down to 5 school programs, but only 10% supported dropping down to 4 school programs. And then in terms of phases or number of years to complete the work that needed to be done, 54% favored 1 phase over 7 years, 51% favored 2 phases over 14 years, and 14% favored 3 phases over 21 years. We looked a little bit more in depth at the Early Childhood Center because of the low number. It's very controversial at this point. There's people who favor it, there are people who don't favor it. There are a lot of folks, when they come to the forum, they might not favor it when they first came, but as they heard more, they started to be more in support of it. So we wanted to look at it a little bit more. One of the questions people asked was, is there a difference between parents and the school administration or the school staff? And there was. We can see here that school employees favored the ECC more. 53% of them were in favor versus parents or residents at 31%. So then we asked for each option, we asked, do you want to keep this option or eliminate this option? And so they answered keep or eliminate for each. These are the proportions of respondents who want to keep each option. And so we see options 1, 2, and 6 come in at 70% or higher. So 70% or more of the respondents wanted to keep option 1, which is a new twin school and a renovated early childhood center. Option 2, which is a new twin school with an early childhood center in it and a new single elementary school. And option 6, which was a new twin and a new single elementary. And then about 40% wanted to keep on the table renovating the middle school, adding a new elementary school, and renovating a building for an early childhood center. About a third were in favor of keeping the new triple school on the table, and the 3 elementary school renovations, option 5. That's a significant renovation to Douglas, Conant, and Gates. 46% wanted to keep that on the table, and only 14% wanted to keep the status quo on the table. So that's just doing the work that was identified in the capital improvement plan. So after this question, then we asked for people's favorite option, and in this question, they could only answer one of the options. And so this broke out with option 6, option 2, and option 1 being the most favored at 20%, 19%, and 17% respectively. And then those were followed by option 4, the middle school option, option 5, the 3 elementary renovations at 15%. The triple school, only 11% wanted to identify that as their favorite option, and 3% identified the status quo as their favorite option. So that's your option.
Okay, so now what is the DMPRC recommending to the school committee? And I'm going to back up one slide because I think this is the best visual. So we had 7 options that we got feedback about, and you can see very clearly options 1, 2, and 6 were far preferred as the options to keep. Then we went through all of the qualitative comments, which we had pages and pages and pages of. And then the DMPRC talked about it further and decided to go with option 2 and option 6. So the recommendation to the committee is option 2 and option 6 with a slight caveat around option 6, which is to continue to explore ways to address the needs of the preschool. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about that. So option 1 and option 2 both have the early childhood center as part of it. And option 6 maintains the 6 elementary schools by building a new twin school At this point in time, we're looking at the Gates property, although further work will be done in the design phase to make sure that's the best location. So option 6 is fairly simple. It's a twin school, likely on the Gates property, to replace 2 of the elementary schools, and then in phase 2, we'd renovate the 3rd elementary school. Options 1 and 2, again, have an early childhood center. So option 2 is the other option that we're moving forward. It's a twin school, likely on the Gates property. One side of the twin school would be an elementary school, and the other side would be an early childhood center with all of the preschools and the kindergartens from the whole district in this early childhood center. And then in phase 2, the other elementary school gets renovated. So these are all 2-phase options. Option 1 was a new twin school on the Gates property for 2 elementary schools, and then phase 2 was to renovate Conant to be an early childhood center. And there were 2 major downsides of that. One is that the preschool needs are not addressed for 12 to 14 years. So that was the main reason that the DMPRC thought that was not the most viable option. Secondly, if we're going to do an early childhood center, there was a preference to make it fairly centralized within the district, and so the Gates property would be a good place for it. So the 2 options that are moving forward are option 2 and option 6. They're both twin schools, likely on the Gates property. All right? So in option 2, it's 1 elementary and 1 early childhood center. In option 6, it's 2 elementary. And in both cases, in phase 2, then Conant gets renovated. Okay? So the recommendation, a twin school that would house either 2 elementary schools or an elementary school and an early childhood center. Continue to consider option 2, the new twin elementary early childhood center and a new single elementary, and option 6, which is 3 new elementary schools. One is a twin school on the Gates property, the other is Conant in phase 2. That includes a plan to address the needs of preschool students in phase 1. So that's the part yet to be developed, is what that best model is. But as you know, the preschool currently, we have 2 classrooms at the Blanchard School, and the remaining classrooms are in the administration building on campus here, and that is not seen as a long-term viable location for our preschool students. So that's where the recommendation came from. So feedback on grade configuration was received, and many positive benefits of the early childhood center were described both quantitatively and qualitatively. We also recommend investigating grade configurations in greater depth, as Mary said. The early childhood center, we had a percentage of people who loved it, we had a percentage of people who didn't, and we need to sort of further explore that before a final decision is made. Although option 1, the new twin elementary and renovated early childhood center ranked high, the preschool needs led us to recommend dropping option 1, so I already explained that. And we also recommend dropping the triple school, the renovated R.J. Gray to a middle school, and those of you who followed it closely knew that the issue with that is that we would be starting with the middle school, and the elementary school needs would be addressed later on, so 12 years from now, 14 years from now, and we're already in the state mass building authority pipeline for reimbursement as long as we're renovating Douglas or something to replace Douglas. So there was lots of feedback that we didn't want to give that up to start over and look at the junior high as our starting point. And then we're eliminating option 5, which is 3 significant elementary school renovations, and option 7, which was the status quo, just renovating the buildings where they are. Do you have anything? All right, so that's our presentation. We're happy to take questions or comments.
Diane.
I have a whole bunch of questions. So quite a few people have noted that there's wetlands at the gate site and that there's no traffic study that has been done. So my question is, what happens if we choose a twin school, which it looks like we're going to, which was the recommendation, and then the feasibility phase, which I think is phase 3 of the MSBA process, finds that we have nowhere to put it?
Great question. So this was all based on the study done by Dorn Whittier, which looked to some degree at the sites. We really limited them to the sites that currently have schools on them because we have other processes that have looked for land in Acton and Boxborough, and we believe there aren't properties that could potentially house schools readily available. So I meant to talk a little bit about what are the next steps. So the next step is that the DMPRC is finishing their work. The building committee has been voted by the school committee and will begin meeting next week, actually. And the school committee will give the building committee direction. The building committee will take this forward. We're moving towards a vote on December 4th for design funds. So we would hire an owner's project manager and an architect. And then the next 18 months is spent in feasibility and design. So to answer your question, a lot of things could change in that process based on feasibility. So we thought Conant was probably the most buildable school lot we have, and the wetlands there as compared to the wetlands on the Gates Douglas site. It's actually Gates that has the most space for a building. And we've envisioned Gates Douglas almost as a campus. If we were to build a twin school there, we'd take down the Douglas building, and we'd use the Douglas property for things like parking and fields and so on. And hopefully we'll be able to build a better walkable connection between Douglas and Gates. This is all very early, and there'll be a lot of feasibility. So if it's not feasible on the Gates property, then we'll be looking more at the other properties and so on and so forth. It's possible that the plan changes based on feasibility in that 18-month period. But this is with the knowledge we have and the amount of study by the engineers and architects that have been done so far, what we think is the most feasible way to go.
Okay, one more set. It's about the Early Child Care Center. I wondered if there's a discussion around keeping an early child care site at Blanchard, just because it would be sad. Oh, sorry. Was there any discussion around keeping a site at Blanchard? It would be a shame to lose that at Blanchard. I'm just throwing that out there. And then I was wondering, so when you say early child care center, does that include the Carol Hebner School and the integrated preschool currently housed at the administration building? It's both of those?
Okay. So the Early Childhood Center, as we're describing it here, would be all of the preschools and all of the kindergartens across the 6 elementary schools. So we got lots of feedback, and within the feedback, there are people who would prefer to keep preschool at Blanchard. So I think this next number of months, we're going to be exploring that in more detail and trying to figure out what kind of options we have for the preschool. There are pros and cons to any model, whether it's all in one site or whether it's in multiple sites and so on. So I think we're still going to be talking about it. So it's an early childhood center, all preschools, all kindergartens.
And so
Yeah.
there was an email that came through from a woman who was concerned around like the wisdom of housing an early child care center in a twin school, and felt it would be better to house it in a single building apart that's separate from the twin school. So can you react to that?
The qualitative data, we had all kinds of pros and cons about both things, all those things. So a couple of things. So it's early childhood center. One of the advantages to it is it frees up space in every classroom, in every school, in every elementary school. So Education has changed since our buildings have been built, and there's a much greater need for instructional spaces, for small group instruction, for reading support, for English language support, for OT/PT, et cetera, et cetera. So even the Parker Damon building, that's only 15 years old, is tight on space, particularly for instructional breakout space. So one of the advantages of an early childhood center is it frees up 2 or 3 classrooms in every elementary school and makes instruction better in those schools. The other piece of it is that when you look at the number of kids we're going to have over time, we could fill 5 elementary schools well, but 6 we're sort of short. So if we don't do the early childhood center, then the elementary schools that we're going to have will have, I want to say, 382 kids in 3 of the schools. And if it's grades K to 6, you end up having 2 classrooms at several grades and 3 classrooms at several grades. So that's not ideal either. So there are real pros and cons to either model. So yes, we had feedback that if you had the early childhood center on one side of a twin school and an elementary school on the other, some of the feedback was that's great. The little kids could partner with the older kids and still have exposure and have book buddies and that kind of thing. Some people felt like if you do that, you might have too much demand for that elementary school. People might not want to go to other elementary schools after kindergarten. Hard to know if that will play out that way. So you may have received an email that way. We have, I think, 40, 50 pages of comments all around those kinds of things. And that qualitative data was coded and is in your packet.
Tessa?
All right. How many preschool classrooms are in the administration building now?
5 if you don't count the extended day. So there's more classroom spaces than that, but there are 5 preschool classrooms.
So we have 118 preschoolers in classrooms. We have 2 classrooms at Blanchard and 5 at the admin building for a total of 7.
So is there a reason that if we're building a new twin school, we couldn't build it to accommodate preschool classrooms within it the way they are at Blanchard? Like if we were building a new twin school, right, couldn't we, it's not built, so couldn't we just build it big enough to accommodate, you know, to however many kids it accommodates or whatever?
So I think that's the next phase of what we want to explore over the next few months. We've started conversations with Joe Gibowitz, our early childhood coordinator. We're going to do more of that with the leadership team and then bring it to the building committee and or the school committee. But so potentially we could do that. We could build, 5 extra classrooms on one side or the other of the twin school or half and half, leave some in Blanchard. There are several different ways we could look at it. So when we said option 2 and option 6 said, however, explore solutions for the preschool. Essentially, that's not the administration building. So that, I think, is the next phase of what we'd like to do, and we'll be engaging the committee in that conversation.
Deanne?
No, I know I'm jumping to before the school start time stuff, but is that, I guess you can't really look at that as well, because I know during that study, they found that those students, like the younger children, react better for learning early morning as opposed to later. So I don't know if that gets factored in as well. I just know that they struggle with all their specials. All the teachers seem to want the specials after 12 because the kindergarten and, students aren't engaged anymore. They can't really function.
So one of the things we could consider if we had an early childhood center is what the best schedule would be for that group of kids, and whether or not that's on the same bus schedule or a different bus schedule as the elementary school. So it could provide some options there.
Any other questions? Yeah, if you have public can come up.
Hi, I'm Sunanda Pepala, West Acton, and my kids go to Douglas. I think that was a great presentation, but something that bothers me is our statistical data or the survey feedback we have is only 252 people, correct? 256? 266. I think that's a really low number. And I think basing decisions based on that low number is going to create like a big gap between what we are doing and what the residents want. So I kind of take some of the ownership of the community to be more involved. But what can you do to reach out more to the community? What can you do maybe through the PTOs? What can you do so you can get more response? Have you thought, has the committee thought about how to get the community more involved? Many of us feel that, partly, we weren't involved, but now we are, and we are trying to be. But we'd like to see more initiation from the school committee as well. Maybe you have channels through the school, the principals.
So all of this was shared with all of the PTOs. We posted flyers all over town.
Yeah.
We taped, Christina was kind enough to actually tape the whole presentation for ActonTV. So the town's members could watch it whenever they wanted to and could respond online. We had multiple forums that met, some daytime, some evening. We had one on Sunday. And before every single forum, we had multiple Facebook posts, and all of the PTOs sent out reminders and letters to parents. So maybe Christina can comment more, but I agree with you. It is a very small number. I would argue that it's not for lack of trying by the committee to get the community to come and see some of these presentations. But I'm going to let Christina respond now.
Thank you. I was in charge of the outreach effort to publicize the forums, and I think you can look at it different ways. You can say, oh, there's only 266 responses. That's only 10% of the people that answered the start time survey. But what we needed from people is a real commitment. What we were putting forth wasn't simple. It was sort of complicated to understand the nuances of these 6 different options, and we were asking people to commit at least 30 minutes to a presentation, then another hour of discussion. So I actually don't feel badly about the 266 number, and I think we got so much really valuable feedback from the people who were in the forums, qualitative and quantitative. We had a huge outreach effort in both media, social media, hard copy flyers through these meetings, and I think people knew about it. I really do. I'm not offended that we didn't get more people because we asked a lot of them. Moving forward, there's certainly going to be opportunities to be involved in the building project going forward. So we are having our kickoff meeting next Wednesday, which is June 14th. It'll be in room 13 in the admin building, and the public is certainly welcome to come. I think we have a great team of people organized and committed to that group. So we'd love to have community involvement and feedback along the way. I feel really good about where we are in the process so far. It sounds simple, but a good way to just think of where we are right now is we believe at this point we need a twin school that also addresses the needs of our preschool students. And it took a lot to get here, but I feel good so far about how we got here and moving forward.
Yeah.
Can you remind us how many forums you held?
We held 12, and we held them during the week, during the day, at night, on the weekend, during the day, and at night. There were loads and loads of opportunities. We even added them when we started to get complaints towards the end that people couldn't make it in their schedule or they didn't like the time we chose. So we did add a few more on the weekend. So I do feel like we gave people a lot of opportunity. And the online option, I sort of did on a whim, and I did it before I had done a presentation. It turned out to hit a lot of people, so I wish I had practiced more. before I did it. I think it could have been better.
We can all learn.
So I think we'll obviously try to do more of that, more online that's more convenient for people to do on their own time. And if we can possibly think about maybe more frequent outreach in simpler, shorter ways. But for this phase, I don't see another way around it. I think we did what we had to do.
Okay.
I would agree with the fact that it wasn't for lack of trying.
Okay.
The forum that I went to was unfortunately not well attended.
Yeah, the only last piece of advice I have is when you have those options, right, those are too many. If we can probably keep it simple, then we would probably have a better chance of respond, because it took, even though I've educated myself somewhat, and I can say I didn't go to, but when I looked, it took me a while to digest all the options. So if we keep it simple and more accessible and easy, and then the community needs to step up too.
I agree. No, we went back and forth because there were a few options we thought we should just delete and not bring to the community. But then we thought, well, they're going to ask, why isn't there an option that we can just do quickly and solve all our needs at once? Why do you want to eliminate the triple school? So even though going out, I thought, this is not going to fly, this is crazy, we felt like we did have to let everybody know what we were considering so we weren't questioned later about why there wasn't something being considered. So hopefully that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Alan Nitschel. So I attended one of the forums, and it was very informative. At the forum, of course, my question was about cost and looking at the various price tags. So I stayed during this part of the meeting tonight because I wanted to find out what the financial plan of this was. And I was very surprised to see the conclusion of the presentation without any money discussed whatsoever. No cost estimate, no impact on property tax, none of that stuff is there. I don't know how we can make decisions like this without having a track that talks about cost as compared to the options. You're asking people to express opinions, but there's no cost involved. Another problem that I have is I also agree that the 266 number is pretty low, maybe because it required too much of an investment for people to vote. But I'm very concerned that we have mixed up staff and employee comments with resident taxpayer comments. The staff employee comments are very valuable. I think their recommendation for an ECC should be considered seriously as a good recommendation from staff. But then the taxpayers have to be able to make a decision based on how much they want to spend for it, unless the employees are kicking in out of their pocket, which I'm sure they're not. So you can't just mix everybody together and say, here it's 66, 70%, and not indicate who are the voters and taxpayers and who are not, because that's very important. So I guess my bottom line question, without any other financial information, is this going to require an override? That's my question.
Mary, would you like to respond? So to the cost question, we did include costs in the presentations, but they're incredibly broad, high-level costs, and it's really the design and feasibility phase where costs are really going to be estimated. So we did not include that in this report. And then I would just point out that in our packets online is a full report, and all of the data items are cut by all respondents, residents, and staff, so you can see the data for what residents or taxpayers are thinking versus what the administrator or the staff are thinking. So.
Okay, so is the recommendation that you're proposing, one of those two which are very similar, is that going to require a property tax override? That's my question.
I don't know at this time.
Will you know by December 4th?
No, because we don't know what the cost is, and so it'll be December 4th is just for the design funds.
So you want the taxpayers to pay for a design of a building when they don't know what the cost is going to be or whether it's going to require an override. Is that what you're saying?
Right, because we need the design to know the costs, right.
Okay, well, that will be an easy vote for me.
Paul,
Thank you.
high-level numbers have been listed, so there is some estimate out there, but hopefully we can refine those a little bit before December 4th.
My name's Samantha Valente Phillips, and as a parent who's been in the school system for 16 years and 4 kids who've graduated, stepdaughters, the buildings need to be redone. they need to be done a long time. So I'm very grateful that we are doing this. I have 2 questions. The ECC, I'm also a preschool teacher, so that's very important to me. However, I didn't hear, maybe I misunderstood, is there an option where kindergarten is not part of the preschool so that they can stay with their current schools?
Yes, so that would just be renovating,
But still getting a new
finding-
preschool?
Finding an option, yes, because anything that we do, we feel very strongly that we need to address the needs of the preschool that's at the admin building.
Okay, that's great. And then my second question is, are there provisions and questions being asked about the integrated preschool where you have special needs children whose needs need to be addressed, as well as the cost of those things being added into anything that we are doing? So I just want to make sure that the integrated preschool program is also being
Absolutely. That's
part of that
exactly- yes.
considered.
So we have a mandate from the state that we have the integrated preschool and that we serve any preschool children in our communities that that are on an IEP and need that extra help. And I'm going to let maybe one of you, Dawn or Deb or Marie, talk about how those services are already a part of the school and will continue to be.
When we talk about the preschool, we're talking about what used to be called the integrated preschool. So it's the Carol Hebner preschool, and do you want to add to it? So one of the exciting things is that new space could be built for those students, designed specifically for those students, and room for services and all of that, including programming and so on. So that's absolutely what we're talking about. And option 6 is the option that has all the kindergartens still in the elementary schools, but we'll find a solution for the Acton side of the preschool.
So they're still being considered, but kindergartens. Okay, I just didn't understand.
Yep, so option 2 has all the kindergartens together in one school with the preschool students. Option 6 has 6 elementary schools. All the kindergartens are in all the elementary schools. And then we're still working on where to put the preschool classrooms, the Acton preschool classrooms.
Okay, and that's clear. That wasn't clear to me earlier, so that would be phase 1. Okay, if we can make sure that's clear, because personally, I prefer the kindergarten stay where they are. So I didn't understand how to personally vote on those. So if we could just make that clear, that'd be great. Thank you.
My name is Ripley Martin. I'm a resident of Barker Road in Acton, and I have students at the Douglas School. First of all, thank you for making the best of the data you had available to you. I think it was really helpful to understand the quantification of it. It does indicate the degree of systems complexity we have in the town across pre-K, kindergarten, elementary, middle, and high, and the different rules that are attributable to each one of these different populations. And understanding the trade-offs, both qualitative and quantitative, across these now narrower set of scenarios is very helpful. I come from private industry, and in my private life I run a mission-critical business that can never go down. When we want to make a change, we model it out extensively ahead of time. And you can build systems dynamics models to understand who's going where, under what rules, and understand where friction points might exist as part of those systems. I understand you've employed some external consultants to understand site plans, et cetera. Traffic patterns go into these things, wetland plans. I strongly encourage us to, or ask a question about what the plan is to, understand how changing the system impacts the system's dynamics of all of those different constituent elements, from the schools themselves, the people going through the schools, the buses going back and forth across all the different locations, because it's very easy to break something by accident. And you can model out things like empathy, you can model out things like kids going to a kindergarten in a different building from a preschool and a different building from a elementary school, et cetera. And I was wondering what we plan to do to understand that very quantitatively.
So I would say that is what we intend to do if the 2 towns approve the design and feasibility funds. That's the key part of that, because it takes funds to do that.
Yep.
So we haven't done at this stage, but that's what's going to happen at the next stage. And that's why we went from
these scenarios.
Right, we went from 7 options. We couldn't afford to play out 7 options.
Right.
And so the next phase, and we will be working with the MSBA, who has done a great deal of this work, and so they're a partner at the table. They're not just rubber stamping what we want, but they're a partner at the table. So with MSBA and then our OPM and our architect will do the design and planning and all that, because we haven't looked at traffic implications, and we will look at that and all of the
The traffic implications are one piece of this, but I'm talking about every element of the network.
So, I mean, I don't know that, I don't know all this stuff. I mean, this is new, so I would love for you to stay really involved in this process and keep telling us what we need to be doing. That would be fabulous. So.
It's a solvable problem, yeah. Okay.
Hi, I'm Karen Brandstein on Sawmill Road. I have a child at Merriam and a child at the high school, and I work at Merriam. So I'm one of the over 100% people. And I went to the last presentation in Boxborough, and there were not a lot of people there, but I wanted to thank you for doing it because it allowed me to understand what the options were. And, you know, all credit to Christine, but I don't know that I would have gotten it if I hadn't been there in person and kind of asking questions as I went along. So that was really helpful. I wonder if you have, I don't know if this is information you have, but what the breakdown is on the people currently at the twin school at Parker Damon who supported the idea of a twin school. And given that those are the options that are on the table now, I would definitely, we have a model, so I would urge that we somehow get the people at Parker Damon now involved, more involved. I know that you have people on the committee, but there's a lot that we do know. And so if you're building a twin school, let's use what we know about the twin school that we have. So that's it.
Karen, as a twin school parent, we're one step ahead of you. No, we are fully aware of the benefits and challenges of our current twin school building. And as part of the district master plan review process, put together a document that was actually written by 2 twin school teachers that are, I think it was phrased to be design considerations for a future twin school. And some of the issues that we have with the Parker Damon building, I think have to do more particularly with that design, not the fact that it's 2 schools necessarily, but it's very open, it's very noisy. There's lots of things that possibly could have been done with design to help with the noise, for example. There's issues with dismissal, there's issues with shared spaces. I feel like we have a really good documented list of those issues that we're going to take with us and share with the building committee and really try to keep top of mind moving forward. So hopefully that helps if you have any concerns.
And I'm always happy to share my opinions. So I'll talk to you about lunch later.
Great. I think I know all about lunch, actually.
Hi, I'm Corinne Schiefelbein. I live on Greenwood Lane, and I was able to attend one of the forums, for which I was very grateful because it really did help to make sense of the many, many options and factors that were being considered. I'm very glad that Rep brought up the systems design questions and really hoping that we'll figure out how things might play out before we find ourselves in the middle of it. I hear so much from parents about their frustration with the current busing that we have and with the walker status during kindergarten selection, how it plays into, it really plays into all levels of a family's experience in elementary school, because people buy their houses based on what school they think they want their kids to go to, whether they have kids yet, they don't. It's become a driving factor in a lot of ways, this sort of geographic clustering that we currently have. And I realize that there may not have been suitable properties on the market in the North Acton area in the last 12 months, but if something were to come up, or even look like it might be coming up, I would hope that the building committee would keep that in mind. And since we're still in the very early phases, we really don't get a lot of chances to build a new school in a new location. And if we do get that chance, I strongly believe that it could help with some of the things that flow out of that at a systems level in the school district that parents find really painful.
Thank you.
So, thanks.
Good evening. Emily Ying, Badger Circle. I actually want to make a comment about the 266 survey result. I know you guys did a lot to try to promote this forum, and you said both sections in the evening for Boxborough and Acton. But I think when we received the notice in the email, if you can draft something, 7 options. The shortest of the period is 7 years to complete. The other 6 is pretty much 20 years. Total cost, $200 million each ballpark for each options. If you put this number, I did a little bit of calculation. Say we have 30,000 residents. You basically ask almost $10,000 every man, woman, child in this town. Then they will come. And when we received the email, I think it's a very fuzzy kind of concept. What was this about? If I don't have kids in elementary school, probably unlikely I will attend. That's just sort of a suggestion. And also, I want to ask how we did the outreach to people, to residents who doesn't have any kids. They don't have any kids in school. Because it's not about parents. It's about Acton residents. So that's my comment. And thank you so much for all your work.
You're welcome. We do realize we need to outreach to everybody. The people we really need to reach for this aren't even pregnant yet.
I know I'm sorry, I do have to tell everybody, the last forum you guys host in Boxborough, probably 6 people showed up, including some of the town volunteers. That's how I know.
So we did use our school emails to email to parents. We used hard copy flyers in locations around town. We used the media, the Beacon, the Action Unlimited, the Acton Patch. And I feel like there was something else, maybe not.
We used the town offices and councils on aging.
Yes.
The libraries.
The libraries and the community education flyer, which I think goes, or booklet, which goes to everybody. So I think it's hard. I don't know that everybody reads the Beacon, for example. There are possibly what we could look into. We didn't do it for this, but there are ways to do postcard mailings to everybody in town, for example. What happens when you do something like that is sometimes there's criticism for spending the money on a mailing, which does cost money. But certainly, I'll look and think about new ideas and share some if you have some.
And also, when we send out the survey, can you attach the video from the YouTube? Because I know ActonTV and the school, Dr. Brain runs some of the program initiative. I actually read a lot, learn a lot from those video. But if you attach it, those video link, and for people, they do want to involve in the survey, but they haven't had a chance to go into the forum. You have this video attached, the link. It's easy to do, and for everyone can review at home. So same as this meeting, I know a lot of people is online right now. Thank you.
Very much.
Thanks.
I do want to say that we are always looking for more suggestions. I think the way this process was carried out, I think it was really thorough, and I think we truly did the best that we could and really offered a lot of options. But anyone out there who has other ideas for outreach, send us an email, because we're always open to thinking about other ways to reach the community.
Thank you. Adam Kenny, Kennedy Lane in Acton. So first of all, I want to echo the sentiment from a few others. I unfortunately didn't make it, but my wife did make it to one of the sessions and said nothing but very positive things about all the information that was shared. I think the information she brought home allowed me to understand everything without having to go again, and I think the amount of outreach that I saw was pretty impressive. And despite the fact that maybe we didn't reach as many people and maybe not as many people answered as we would have liked, I think it was, at least in my estimation, not due to any lack of effort. So thank you all for your efforts to date. Two quick comments and then I guess a question to close. So first, I understand this is a process, and I understand that we won't know final costs. We won't know final decisions about location and property usage until the very end. But I do think it's important that we learn more every step of the way. And so I hope that when we get to December, the answer isn't that that's still something we have to determine later, and you're asking for money before we learn anything else. So I just would request that throughout the entire process we're getting closer and closer so that as we spend money, we're spending it better educated than we were when we started. My question is kind of calling back to a slide that you showed earlier. It looks like only 30%, give or take, of parents are supportive of the ECC. I don't know enough myself to know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. It sounds like most of the committee and most of those involved think that we have to do something, and it is a good thing. I would just ask, how are you planning to get the other 70% on board, or at least more than half of them on board, so that we don't have a big concern come December that the committee and those closest to the process are pushing forward with something that clearly the town at this point isn't ready for?
But Marie, before you comment, I'm going to say we're way over, so I just would like to stop public comments here. And if, so please, we really need to move on. Go ahead, Marie.
Okay, now I forgot. Just a couple of points. I want to emphasize we're very early in the process still. This last phase was about getting from 7 options to a more reasonable number of options by which then we can communicate. And I think it's going to be much easier now that we're talking about a twin school with 2 different grade configuration options to get feedback, outreach, and so on. So there will be much more outreach, sending things out, and it won't need to be a 30-minute presentation because we're not talking about 7 options. So it was very systematically, that was the purpose of this phase. Now the next phase is outreach around what the options are now and getting feedback and so on. And the big question is early childhood center or not. So we will definitely be seeking feedback from folks about that. And the cost estimate piece, I just want to say we're definitely going to have more refined costs over the next few months and certainly by December. Certainly they're not full design costs. They'll be high-level costs. But what we had before was assuming we were doing everything in every building and so on. At our next meeting, we have a presentation around what needs to be done in all the other buildings. And then within a month of that or so, I think we're going to have much better idea of the costs of what we're going to be looking to do. So you'll have more in the fall around that.
Great. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jamie. I live on Houghton Lane in Acton. So Houghton Lane kind of is right behind Douglas, and our side of Houghton Lane is in a flood zone, and we're also behind wetlands. So I know that there's a lot of, we've kind of looked at, doing some building on our property, and it's really challenging to deal with those things. So I guess my question is about that walkway between between Douglas and Gates, and it sounds like with one of the proposals, you would be trying to do construction and turn that into like a roadway to better connect the two. At least I heard that in one of the forums I was at before, and I guess I would just really caution before, at this early stage, before going into a design and whether it's architecturally feasible, to just make sure that that would fly with the health board and everything, and how that would affect kind of the homeowners that are on that side that are affected by the water levels changing over over there. So I just wanted to offer that.
That'll definitely be part of the feasibility study, so thank you very much.
Can I just say, I don't think we're talking about a driving road between Douglas and Gates. We're talking about a better walking road than the bridge, a better walking bridge. But it's still very early. JD's not here tonight, our facilities director. He couldn't be here, but he could elaborate more. Glenn could as well. But we're not talking about driving, and of course, we'll be very sensitive to the neighbors, and we understand what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Yes, hi, Steve Ballard from Boxborough. I just want to echo some of the things that I've heard from Ripley and some of the other people about my concerns as a member of the Finance Committee in Boxborough, but also as a former teacher. And I remember back in 99 to 2000, I was primarily housed as a music teacher at the Wildwood School in Wilmington. When they decided in the middle of that year to turn that school transform it from K to 5 to kindergarten, first grade. And then I was at the Woburn Street teaching second, third grade recorders to tons of third graders. And I still don't know, I have a friend who's on the Finance Committee over there, and I want to ask him how it, what's resulted from this. But you're attempting to do something with this kind of, pseudoscientific 250-person sample. And I know Professor Brolin here knows very well how, if anyone should, that we can't base, this is not a data-based presentation that you guys gave us. I mean, you had all of these variables there, you had all of these options, and you come to option 2 and 6. We're going to go with this. I don't understand how, if you're going to spend money for studies, given how complicated this is and how many variables are involved, I mean, that we wouldn't do a study to ask for a big picture analysis. A big picture analysis because, I mean, in my experience in Boxborough, the last 3 years, we had an easier question. What do we do with space needs for public safety, fire and police? That was 3 years ago. We had a special space needs analysis group that worked on it, and every year they went to town. We went to town meeting, and they asked for money for design studies, assuming that we should have a $25 million or $23 million public safety building like Acton's, but for Boxborough, for police and fire, where the police and fire are now. But you know what? Now, we on the Finance Committee kind of pushed back, and people in town were saying, we can't afford that. That's too much, and we don't need it. We don't need to triple the space. But there we were just looking at basically space needs. We weren't looking at what is the philosophy of our school system, what do kids need, transportation issues. It was a lot easier question, but even then, because we had an outcome determinative process from the beginning, some people said, I think we need this much space. We need to have a public safety building with fire and police here. We went through that process and we spent $100 and something thousand over 3 years and wasted 3 years of time to go toward an outcome determinative result that was ridiculous, that wasn't realistic. Now we're on track to do what some of us said 3 years ago. Fire has the biggest need, DPW is next, and police really don't have any need. And so guess what? Now we have a building committee, not the snag, we have a building committee, and they are on track to do that. It's not going to be 25 million, it's going to be a lot less.
So
And
Steve, we partner really closely with MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, that has a dearth of experience and knowledge, and everything that we've done so far has been very carefully thought out through, oh, I'm sorry, yes it is. It is on. Oh, okay, is this better? Oh, sorry, all right, well, I didn't know I did, okay. Sorry, Glenn, I'm going to stick in my... So we're partnering very closely with experts to make sure to avoid just those pitfalls that you've spoken about. So,
Well, we had HKT, we had an expert, group that came in and did this analysis, but it's like I was thinking before when I saw this presentation up there. My son, who went through the AB system, is doing his first year in a PhD program in sociology, and he was telling me about his presentations, and I saw what he did in statistics, and that would flunk I mean, even, you know, sociology 101 in college. I mean, I mean, it doesn't, it's totally meaningless. You look at that, and then, you know, the first presentation was about, well, we talked to the teachers, and we talked, and then this doesn't add up to 100%. I'm like, garbage in, garbage out. If you,
Point of order.
well, let me ask a question. So,
No, Paul has to respond to
sorry.
the committee member, so
Okay.
please go ahead.
If you can get more parents to respond, I would appreciate it.
Well, no, I think
We need to move on now.
I think it's good to ask. My question
Excuse
is,
me, we need to move on now.
are you really going to
You know
base
what?
a decision
I'm gonna ask
on
you
this?
I'm going to ask you to finish because we need to move on.
Well,
to the next
so I
thing.
guess-
You've been there for
All
much
right.
more than the 2 minutes, and
I'll-
we need to move on. Thank you.
I'll just,
I
okay.
need you to move off now. Thank you very much.
Okay.
No, thank you
Can
very
I
much.
just ask the one question I was
No,
leading up to?
thank you very much. I said that we need to move on.
Well, my
Thank
question
you.
was,
You can send your question in. Excuse me, this is not a conversation with the audience.
we need to figure out what we're doing before it's a $120 million project over how many years, and you guys don't know what you're doing at all, and you don't even have a unified philosophy, and you don't even tell us what it is.
Okay, thank you. You may step down, please. Next, any more comments from the committee before we move on? Thank you. Glenn? Thank you.
Item 10.2, before we move on past this agenda item, just very briefly an update on where we are at, excuse me, with the Mass School Building Authority. As of, we met the deadline for the committee's knowledge and for the communities to provide the school building committee's list of names, and we did submit that to the MSBA in accordance with their deadline of June the 2nd. The next two items that are part of our tasks and necessities as a school district to comply with as we move forward in this process include the submission of the educational profile questionnaire, and that is due on July the 3rd. And also on July the 3rd is the online enrollment projection, the first of two aspects related to enrollment, and so that's coming in the next few weeks. Activity has begun on both of those aspects. We'll keep the committee and the community informed as we move forward with that. That is it for me for item 10.2.
Christina, do you want to comment on the school building committee?
No, just to repeat what I said before, that the committee kicks off next Wednesday, room 13 in the admin building from 7 to 9 p.m. And just to counter the last speaker, we're about 2 years into what has been a really thoughtful, really well-planned process to address our capital needs. He may have an issue with where we are right now, but I don't believe it's based on a really in-depth understanding of the work that's gone in.
All right, thank you. I think, Deb, you're up for homework policy.
Yeah, that's good. I'm on. Great. Good evening. I'm Deborah Bookis, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. And tonight, I'm here to present the revised draft homework policy. One of the district's goals this year was to review and update the district's homework policy as it supports one of the three high-leverage areas, homework and workload, identified in our challenge success work. While policy writing and approving, of course, lies within the school committee purview, we appreciate the opportunity to provide our collective input and a draft policy to the policy subcommittee. There are three sections to tonight's presentation. The first provides a quick overview of the year-long process that enabled us to write the draft that was brought to the policy subcommittee. The second section reviews the most recent draft. And the last section outlines some conditions to create lifelong readers. We started in mid-October with the school leadership team, or SLT, which consists of cabinet and principals, and shared what is currently happening in all of the schools, what's been communicated to the school communities, and the work plan for the year. Basically, we shared the state of homework as it is right now within our group. Then in late October, the district leadership team, which is the DLT, and consists of about 50 district leaders, including department leaders and coordinators, directors, assistant principals, and deans, read through the Challenge Success Student Survey quantitative results using a protocol called the 3 A's. And a protocol is a structured way to look at data. In the very beginning of February, a small planning group met and reviewed the DLT feedback for patterns and themes, wrote a draft for beginning feedback, and identified readings for the larger group. Then in March, SLT came back together again to read and discuss and to revise the draft. In April, SLT met twice. We read and discussed the next two versions of the drafts. We looked very specifically at the components listed in the first bullet on the slide. Again, shared where the schools were in relation to that draft, because it's much later in the year now, and agreed on some final draft language. A draft was shared at the School Committee Policy Subcommittee in early May, and it was announced at the May 18th School Committee meeting that first and second reads would take place in June. On June 6th, this past Tuesday, the School Committee Policy Subcommittee met again, and so the draft that was included in the addendum for this meeting is the most current draft. So now to talk a little bit about the policy itself. The foundation for the policy is comprised of our district's core values. Policy, along with structures, practices, and programs, are the vehicles for realizing these values in the district, so they need to reflect wellness, equity, and engagement. So before going any further, I want to state that as a group we recognize and respect that there are varying ideas and opinions about homework in the community and also among our staff. The first paragraph of the draft states the purpose of homework, and that is to support student engagement in the classroom. This is the cornerstone or the bedrock of the policy. It's supported by our district core value of engagement, as well as the work of Challenge Success to change the conversation about homework from quantity and achievement to quality and engagement. The term homework refers to an assignment or activity that supplements or supports class instruction. Homework should increase in complexity with the maturity of the student, and this can be established through activities and assignments that encourage students to investigate for themselves and to work independently as well as with others. The second paragraph speaks to student and family wellness. The June Expanding Our Notion of Success newsletter that was just sent to all families and is in your present packet, again focuses on PDF, playtime, downtime, family time, as well as the benefits of play. You'll recall that our first Challenge Success newsletter back in September introduced the PDF acronym. I'm going to come back to the third paragraph, which is all about reading, and skip on to the fourth for now. The fourth paragraph speaks to equity, specifically about the availability of help and assistance, resources and materials, and student differences and needs when considering homework and assignments. When these values come together, they form the foundation of our draft policy. The policy is supposed to be broad. It's supposed to provide parameters within which our schools and our educators can do their work. To that end, the frequency section also allows for the programmatic individuality of schools, and most importantly, supports the professional decision-making of our educators, who will use the purpose of homework as their guide. The frequency of homework is to increase as students get older. The K-2 statement is very much aligned with the work we've already done with play and early childhood development. In grades K through 2, students will have no homework except for an occasional activity that may include other people. In grades 3-4, students will occasionally have an assigned activity. In grades 5-6, students may expect homework more frequently, Monday through Thursday. There will need to be decisions made at the school in grade levels 3 through 6 to further articulate and communicate how occasionally and how more frequently homework will be assigned. And then in grades 7 through 12, students should expect homework in one or more subjects nightly. Vacations and long weekends will be homework-free. Long-term projects assigned before a vacation will not have a due date earlier than Thursday after vacation. Assessments will not be given any earlier than Wednesday after a Monday closing. We further outline the parameters for mid-years at the high school and MCAS testing. Our religious holidays policy is still in effect. Now back to the third paragraph, which speaks to independent choice reading. And I want to be very clear that independent reading for assignments, activities, and studying will still take place. But research shows that independent choice reading improves student academic and social and emotional learning and is further enhanced with discussion and read-alouds being read to. We want to grow students' motivation to read without prompting, to read for the sheer pleasure and joy of it, to read to enter into new worlds because they choose to do so. Independent choice reading will be encouraged, but not assigned. So, how do we, educators and families, create an environment in which students can't wait to read? When author and founding director of Lit World, Pam Allen, was here last fall for the Family Learning Series, she shared not only how to create that environment, but also the benefits. And one way to create that environment is to read with children. Doing so develops shared values, exposes them to the richness of our language, helps build comprehension, and also learn the power of story. And I know the committee's heard me talk before about how powerful story is and how effective it can be in our teaching. Retelling family stories and telling children the stories behind family traditions and names has been shown to build resilience to stressful events. This quote at the bottom of the slide comes from an article about a study conducted at Emory University in the mid-1990s. The single most important thing you can do for your family may be the simplest of all. Develop a strong family narrative. The ones who know a lot about their families tend to do better when they face challenges. Other benefits, and this is not an exhaustive list, include learning about text structure, building reading skills, and entering into new worlds. I mentioned previously that we want to make sure students have access to books that reflect who they are, mirrors, books that open their eyes and hearts to others, windows, and books that also depict characters who can have an impact on their world. Those are the doors. Pam also spoke of these 5 conditions. Ritual, and children who are read to daily are almost about a year ahead of children who do not receive daily read-alouds, so it's important to set aside time devoted just to reading. An example is a silent reading period at R.J. Gray. The environment, we need to pay attention to students' changing reading preferences and their preferences for unique reading environments. I recently heard Julie Berry, who's a local author, she was working with a high school class, English class, and she shared with them that we have to value browsing. You pick up a book and you start it, you put it back down because it's not a good book for you. And we also have to value rereading a book over and over again. Access, all kinds of libraries. And next year we're going to be focusing on expanding our classroom libraries, and we're working very closely with our library media assistants to create those book lists. Dialogue is all about mutual inquiry of the book. Questions like, what are your biggest questions about this book? How did reading this book change your thinking? And of course, love, that's a given, and modeling being a reader. We can't stress that one enough. So we all know when that book happened, when that book made us fall in love with reading, when time passed without us noticing, when we fell asleep with the light on or under the sheets with a flashlight. For a whole generation, it was Harry Potter. Thank you, J.K. Rowling. For me, it was Little House in the Big Woods, and just for the record, this was it. For others, it was the Hardy Boys, but now I'm beginning to date myself. We'll continue to partner with families to get that book into our children's hands. Author Stephen Lane is coming in November to do just that. We're also supporting both local libraries, summer reading programs. Our schools are also producing summer reading recommendations. I'll be passing around one in a minute, created by our high school librarian, which also includes our educator ideas. What a terrific way to showcase a community of readers. We've also just recently partnered with the Harvard Graduate School of Education and the Saul Zentz Early Childhood Initiative. They have a new project called PUP, the Parent Uptake Project, that's focused on developing very strong readers. Recently, Joe Gibowitz, our early childhood coordinator, and Sharon Ryan, our elementary literacy specialist, met with one of the co-developers, Joan Kelly, and we've been invited to help them find resources and to participate in the beta version. And lastly, we have quite a few upcoming professional learning opportunities for our educators. So you're never too old, too wacky, too wild to pick up a book, read to a child. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm happy to answer questions, and our building principals are here to answer questions as well.
Do we have any questions from the committee? Paul?
That was awesome, Deb, thank you. I haven't had a chance to read the packet since the amendments were posted, and this is exactly what I needed, because, and I don't remember having a policy presented this way. We may have done it, I just don't remember it. It's usually a list of policies that come up, and we read through the policies. This was very helpful. Now, when I read it, I have the presentation in mind, and I'm very thankful for that. The question I do have is that you mentioned in your schedule of events and meetings, I saw a leadership team. Was there coordination with teachers to, make sure they were on board with, especially the parameters that we were putting around regarding, vacation and all those technical pieces? My hope is that the teachers had an opportunity to weigh in on that.
Sure. So for the schools who are presently working on some of the homework work right now, again, schools were in different places, so some of that information was brought back to the schools in line with their work. Schools had already gone through some of their work. The principals already knew where they were, and so if there weren't any changes, they were able to let us know that. And then this was all shared with our teachers about a week and a half ago, and we asked for feedback from our educators as well, so we already have that too. We know that where schools are right now, we know that there are going to have to be some changes, some small tweaks going forward, but that's part of the work going forward now. So, yeah.
Thank you. That was really wonderful. I was looking at the National Association of Elementary School Principals guidelines around homework policy. You can't hear? Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the National Association of Elementary School Principals guidelines around this, and there's two prescriptive things I want to just run by you to see if you consider it. One is that homework should not be used as a behavior management tool or form of punishment. The other is homework should not be done by parents. And then my second question is, what was the rationale for not keeping with time guidelines?
Sure.
And going with the language of occasionally and more frequently?
Sure. So let me answer the time piece first. When Denise Pope was here, I think a lot of people have heard about the 10-minute rule, and she shared with us that the research was really done at high school and then just extrapolated down, and it really wasn't done originally for elementary schools. And so how it's been applied hasn't really been, doesn't have a research base to it. But one of the things we talked a lot about is for some children it takes longer to do homework than it takes others. And so we want the homework to be meaningful for kids. We want it to really be something that they can bring back and engage in with the class. And for some it might take a little bit longer. Of course, if it's unreasonable, we would be having those conversations with parents. But that's why we didn't set a time on that. Okay, now you're going to have to ask the equity piece. Yeah. So we do have a statement in here on the equity piece about being able to do the homework on their own. That's an important piece for us. Not every student has access to help around the homework. So we very much want students to be able to go home and do the homework on their own. Was there one more piece? Say that one more time. Absolutely. I mean, I think that was in the old one of the old ones. There were quite a few old ones. We just felt that was such a given that we would never use homework as a punishment. And also the fact when we're talking about student health and wellness, that's just part and parcel of what we'd be doing. So this is your policy, though. You have a first read now, and it's really all in your hands. So if there are things you want to add, we can certainly consider. Okay.
Eileen?
Thank you, Deb, for that very wonderful presentation. Actually, I'm very impressed by the reading at the end because I think that the whole American society is a reading society. And everywhere you can see people read wonderful books, and that really is very, very great. I have some question about, the reading could be part of the homework, but however, we're talking about the homework policy all the way from K to 12. For some of older kids, reading part probably not necessarily, being part of their homework we're talking about for this homework policy. I don't know, okay? So that could be, but we are mainly talk about the homework they're gonna really do it when they go home, right? Like high school student. Of course, they have some reading, maybe their English project or whatever. But for most of the time, they need to work on something for high school students.
Yeah. So the reading assignments, even starting in third grade, assigned reading will happen. Reading to be able to come back into the classroom and to have a discussion. Reading to write your thinking down. Reading to learn more about something so you can come in and be part of something in the class. So that actually is not just for high school. It would start, in third grade. The reading I was talking about at the very end is that choice reading, right? Just reading for pleasure. Not being assigned. But we ask students to read for science. We ask them to read for social studies. We ask them to read for English. There's lots of actual reading in math. So I think we ask them to do lots of reading in all the subject areas.
Yeah, I think that's sort of my question and my understanding too.
Good.
So I have other questions. At the beginning of the presentation, we're talking about so SLT, which is a school leadership team, and DLT, which is district leadership team.
Yeah.
And I've read this presentation very carefully and also heard you there. And we'll talk about, how do you gather the data to base on, what's your data to make this change. And I heard you have survey for students. You have this SLT, which is the teachers, so group, and SLT, which is district, leadership group. And so I don't remember, what is the survey you do for, I think I did see the survey for the high school student took. I asked for that when I did see that, but is there any data from elementary school students, and how was this whole survey go?
Sure. So the data that I was talking about and referring to was from the Challenge Success Survey data that we did about a year and a half ago now, and that started in 6th grade. So we have data for 6 to 8 and data from grades 9 through 12. And that's the data that we looked at.
Yeah, so, okay, I get that part. So how do we make change for K to 5 then?
Sure. So that data that we gathered from students was just a part of that, just to see what our students' experiences are and how they're feeling and thinking about the homework from grade 6 through 12, and the amount of homework they say that they're getting. But the other kind of data that we looked at was the research that we read. I read very widely around homework, and talking to our principals, and our principals bringing back from their schools what's happening with the teachers. So those are all the different things we considered when we wrote the draft.
Okay, that was clear. Seems like lower grade kids really do not have the directly feedback with teachers, or maybe, get into this whole survey. And also, I think there is another very important part, which is the parent. So do we really, I'm one of the parent. Okay, I'm a 3 children's parent. So do we really need, there is one part I think is a parent which is missing from those, homework policy base. So that's, I don't know if there are any parent
Sure.
involved. Of course, there must be some parent from community talk with the teacher, talk with the principal, this and that. But we do not have this really wide parents at large to involved with this homework review policy or same kind of procedure.
Yeah. So my understanding was that the reason why you mentioned it was mentioned here on May 18th was so that parents would have an understanding that they could voice their opinions and thinking around in June for the first and the second reads. That was my understanding about how policy is. Bridget? Okay.
Yeah, so this is a first read, and if any of the committee members have comments or want further clarification, please get it to, I'm going to say Bridget, or Deb, and we'll have the second read on June 22nd.
Okay,
Bridget.
I did not finish.
Sorry, Bridget, go ahead.
I did not finish, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're not done?
Yeah, I'm not
my
done. I
apologies.
have a couple of the other, stuff. There one slide, I think I don't know if you can go back to that slide and everyone can see what I'm talking about. It's the draft homework policy after the engagement, wellness, and the equity, okay? It's 7, it's number 7. I don't know how many of our audience read Challenge Success. I did read that whole book, which is kind of like our district's Bible right now to change a lot of practice of our school. Okay, especially for wellness and, talk about the, our students' wellness. However, I did read that book very carefully. I agree with 2/3 of it. And when it addressed the academic change, academic climate, or something at that section, we do exchange our, our opinion while we private meet, right? So, but here, let's look at this slide here. Changing the conversation about homework from quality and achievement to quality and engagement. How come quality and quantity and quality is so differently bring into the, different perspective? See, achievement could be along with engagement. How come its quantity lead to achievement and the quality lead to engagement? That is, so it's really, it made me really confused, and I did not agree some of the points in this whole, this whole challenge success. Anyways.
Paul?
So I actually love that sentence. And it reminds me of a article that appeared in the Boston Globe by David McCulloch's son, who is either David Jr. or John, I don't remember his son's name, but he wrote about his father, who was a famous author and historian, and he said that he listed all the awards that his father had won, a Pulitzer Prize, this award, that award. But what his point was that none of those awards did he actually go after. He did something that he loved, and all the awards followed. What my concern is that if we dangle awards in front of our kids, their sense of worth becomes externalized based on the awards that they follow. And I disagree with that. I think that changing that conversation from quantity and achievement to quality and engagement brings education back into the child. And so I'm totally for this.
Yeah, but however, how come engagement and achievement cannot combine with each other? So that's really my.
Yeah, so I think what she's saying is that the emphasis, it's not that they don't link together. In fact, what we'll find, and what Paul just spoke to, is that the more engaged someone is in their learning, most likely they're going to end up doing well because they are engaged. We want students who are engaged internally as well. And so it's not that they're mutually exclusive. It's just we don't necessarily want to always be focusing on how much homework and looking at it for students having that external achievement as an expectation. We also want to focus on the quality of that homework and engaging kids in our learning. So they're not mutually exclusive. It's just shifting the focus. And I just want to go back to another comment that you mentioned. We have read the book that comes along with this, but we're using it somewhat as a guide, not as a textbook that we're following every single thing that's in that book. So I want to just be really clear. You mentioned it's something as a Bible. We're not using it in that way. We're using it as a guide. I think that's really important for the community to hear.
Okay. So I'm sorry, I have 2 more questions because I really studied the whole thing. So yeah, I would like to urge the community really digest this homework policy and give us the feedback, when we have the future meeting. And there is, I noticed if the homework policy changed to the way from slide 12, if we can go to slide 12, there are going to be a lot of homework change, which is from, as you mentioned, the quantity. When the quantity changed a lot, and how do we expect the gap between now and the changed result? And is that going to give us the student life really a real impact?
So I'd actually like to have maybe one of the principals come up and talk about that. When we were looking at this, we've already made quite a few shifts and changes in our homework in all of our schools already. And so I think I mentioned there'll be some tweaks that still have to be made, but not any major changes. So we're already pretty far along in this work. The junior high made some major changes just last year. And I know several of the elementary schools are along the way as well. The high school has been working on this for the past year, and it's going to be one of their major pieces of work for next year. So if any of the principals want to talk about where you are right now, feel free to come on up. But there already have been some very substantial changes, and so we feel that we're well on our way here.
But I just have a last thing, which is, so we're talking about homework change. I do feel that because I have 3 kids in 3 different schools. So we're just, somehow this homework change already impact our kids. We need to think about something which is maximize all student potential, and the school homework change definitely impact, both ends students. Okay, so I don't know if I can suggest there could be some kind of consideration for the optional homework for some students, really. So because, just like you mentioned, some of the homework, when the homework, people doing homework, with a different speed and, different perspective. Maybe one piece of homework, some students do that 5 minutes, some students do that 15 minutes, some students do that 30 minutes. So that maybe some giving this policy right now, and we're just lower the homework load lower a lot. So like that, probably we can consider optional homework for some kids' need. That will really consider all the students' needs.
Yep, and so and when I talked about the professional judgment of our educators and making sure that the homework is engaging for students and so that they can come back to the classroom and participate, that's what we're talking about. So we're going to leave that to our educator professional judgment to make sure that the homework that they're giving to their students is where it needs to be for their students. And that's something that lies in the professional judgment of our educators. Damien, did you want to? Yeah. Okay.
I also want to throw in that when we're considering these younger students, their most important job after school is to play and learn how to socialize, get out there, get physical, get outside, have time with their families. That's the best way that they can recharge their batteries, learn how to regulate themselves, learn how to deal with conflicts. If their focus is homework at younger ages, they're missing out on so much. So that was a major part at why we were looking at, especially in younger grades, cutting back on what's assigned with the hope that families will be able to take advantage of that time to teach those important skills.
I'm not talking about younger grade. I have no problem with grade K to 12 to 2. You may have homework, you may not, which we, in Acton so many years, that's the way it is, right? So I'm not talking about that.
But it's equally as important for grades 3 and 4. They're still little kids. They still need that time to play. We got into a cycle almost, I know when I got here, where we were treating third and fourth graders like seventh and eighth graders with the amount of homework we were giving, and they were missing out on so much. Like Deb said, we looked at the research, we talked to our staff and looked at how our students were able to self-regulate and the types of things they were doing at home with their families, and really found that there was too much. So it was important to write the policy so that there is flexibility. There's going to be times when students will have more homework and less homework, but it's a better match for what those students need at that age.
Bridget, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think this policy really is comprehensive, and it builds on so many other initiatives that the district's been working on over the last couple of years. And I think that goes to one of the things that Paul said about the way it's presented, the rationale behind it, and it's really a wonderful thing to see so many themes come to one place and sort of culminate in this policy. So I think that's great. I would suggest maybe giving a little more than just 2 weeks between now and the next meeting to have a second read, because I can imagine there's going to be conversations about this around the dinner table with families or among teachers as this kind of rolls down as a formal matter. I know there's been a lot of conversation already. And to the extent that this could also affect the student handbook at the high school, I know when we vote that, we'll have to make some allocation for potential change in language for that. But wanted to thank you for the good work on this. It was a very comprehensive and lengthy, thoughtful process.
So, Bridget, I want to be clear. So are you suggesting that maybe we not vote on the
I'm
June
suggesting maybe
22nd?
hold off. I don't
Maybe
know, what do the experts think about conversations that might be happening in the schools?
So certainly understand the need for more time. I guess I would just ask when we could have a second read and a vote so that we know to be able to give guidance to our principals
Yeah.
and our staff come the fall. So that
Maybe
would
the
be
next
only-
meeting after the 22nd. I don't know what the date is off the top of my head,
The
but
summer workshop meeting?
is that the next one?
Yes.
I don't know. What does the committee think about that?
Yeah. Where is the committee on that? Katie?
Our next policy meeting is the morning of the 20th, and I think that gives people, or will give us a week and a half to see how much feedback's coming at us, and if at that point it seems like we won't be able to do a second read, I think we can.
Okay, so we'll have a second read as of now, but we will actually make a more informed decision after the policy meeting on the 20th. Yeah, Deanne?
So I just had a few comments. At first, it was such a wonderful presentation, but you always do very nice presentation, so thank you. I do love the changes that I saw with the 7 through 12 having a high schooler. Those, working over holiday weekends or long weekends was a bit of a struggle because the Tuesday was the day that things were just due. So I think those totally fall into the whole wellness policy, and it's just spot on, so thank you. I did have some questions, and I know Damien had said, and I agree, grades K through 4, they're kids, and even 5 and 6, they're kids. They need their time. But I guess I'm finding and I don't really know what you can do anyways, like how tight you can be on the policy, but it is very open-ended. And so there's just a few things in regards to, like I'm at a school that has no homework, and I know you said that it's been initiated at schools. I don't find parents happy about it, so I don't know if that just continues the way that is or that changes.
There'll need to be some tweaks, if that's the understanding right now. But my understanding is that there are some guidelines in place that go hand in hand with the meaningfulness piece and the engagement piece. So there will be some tweaks that need to be made.
Okay, well, because I have 5th and 6th graders, and yeah, so they're unengaged, at times. But anyway, I think it definitely is difficult in regards to the math. I agree, and I've read the different research in regards to, you don't want to just have to keep doing repetition, but sometimes the pace of the class, you have some students that want to go really fast and some students that need to go much slower, and it just seems that the repetitive nature outside of the classroom helps those students that are struggling when the pace sometimes is being pushed a little faster, helps. But you can't call that that type of homework, I forget what the word was. Everyone knows I'm having all brain farts all night long. What? Yeah, thank you, equitable. But no, not even equitable, sorry. I'm over 50, I have a lot of senior moments. But again, it's not, I pull up the slide, I'm sorry.
Which one is
I'm
it?
struggling
Sorry.
with the word. At the end, it's not, no, keep going.
After this? No, then we're into reading. No,
Forget.
no.
Yeah, right, thank you. There you go. So
Yeah.
that, quality engagement, math homework
Yeah.
sometimes isn't engagement, but I've just heard, I've seen some children really struggle. And again, the pace of the class is going faster. Sometimes they do need that math homework. So
Yeah.
I do feel that the policy sometimes is open-ended to not handle that. I know we trust it in the hands of the educators, but I hear parents really struggling with that. And then in regards to the homework, and you have to have access, what do we do, because it goes all the way up to 12th grade, we have a lot of computer homework. How do the students handle, for those students, because we do have families that don't have as much technology at home as needed in the high schools. So how is that handled, or how is that going to be handled?
I know in the elementary schools that the classroom teachers do a really good job about knowing their students and knowing who has available technology. The access at the high school, and Joanna's here, she might want to answer a little bit more with this, but the same kinds of things happen. I think we do have a pretty good sense. The associate principals, the deans know, and that's communicated to counselors. They do a really good job working with teachers to make sure that students have access. We've done some things through our technology department as well to support teachers and our students. And now that we have the internet access open at the high school, I think it's made it even a little bit easier for students. So that's something certainly to keep in mind. Thank you.
And then just a few more quick notes. One, which is in regards to the policy, I know we always talk about we need to make the community know about the policy. I think the emails from the principals just kind of showing, because we've had a few policies that kind of just get slipped through the cracks and the community doesn't know. If the principals could say, hey, this is out for a first read, as many parents who are going to read it, unfortunately some parents don't read your emails, but the parents that do, at least they'll be able to see that this is still at a first read if they have any comments.
That's a great idea.
And then two other things, choice reading. There are a lot of families that, that they really need some direction from the teachers telling the students to do the reading. I have
strongly
love of
encourage.
learners, right? I have children who I'm pulling books away from, but not everybody has that.
Sure.
And they need the direction from the teacher to have that free reading. So just to think about that. And then the last thing was, you mentioned libraries, that's on the schedule for next year. And if we could just think about, I know some schools have like Fountas and Pinnell or other programs. It's a struggle to find the books to meet the programs. So like say Fountas and Pinnell, your library isn't set up with Fountas and Pinnell. So
That's an assessment? So you're talking about a level library, so I'm talking about classroom.
Right, yeah, level library.
Okay.
I'm just saying there needs to be some matching with your program. So if you're going to do level reading, it's very hard to find the level reading books.
So on our website, we have for our literacy website, we have some, it's already there. So you can find books
I know
at
that,
those.
but then you're sitting and you're studying what books, checking the library to see if they have those books. It's back and forth where if a school, if that's their program, then at least either in the classrooms or somewhere have that available so that you know all your A, B's, and C's.
Well, I think teachers can certainly help parents thinking about the kinds of books that might be terrific for their kids to read. Remember, we want students reading at their independent level, and in the classroom, they're at their instructional level. So we do want to make sure that they are books that they can read independently. Yeah.
Deb, thank you for a terrific presentation, and thanks to the principals for coming. When Eileen joined the committee, I learned about a new concept called parent homework, which I was not aware of, but that's apparently the homework from when students are enrolled in academic programs outside of school. And my question is, it seems that it's becoming more and more common for our students to have parent homework. I just wonder if this concept and this increasingly popular concept of parent homework fed into the desire to change or the need to change our homework policy at all. I'm not saying, I know we have no intention to do a policy for other homework. I just wonder if, are our students more stressed because they're getting homework from other places besides just our schools?
Yeah, so we didn't parse out, our data doesn't parse that out. So we used the data that we had from Challenge Success, which talked about assigned homework. And actually, hang on 1 second if I can take a peek. The data showed weekday and weekend school assigned homework, and then also weekday and weekend non-school assigned homework. And so we don't have it by grade. Going all the way down to, we don't know for the elementary schools, but certainly for 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then for the high school, we have some of that data. And so we have on average for grades 6 through 8, for weekday non-school assigned homework, and these are students reporting, about an hour, about 3/4 of an hour, and then on the weekend closer to about an hour. And then for 9th through 12th grade, 9th grade for the weekday was about a half an hour, and also for 10th, closer to about an hour for 11th. And then for the weekend, it was closer to about 3/4 of an hour, except for 11th grade, which got to about closer to an hour and a half. Now remember, 11th grade SAT prep could be part of that, ACT prep, all those kinds of things probably fit into that. So we don't know where and that's coming from, the non-school assigned, but certainly for those grades we have a little bit of data to use. So thinking about it in total was part of it. Mm-hmm.
I guess it's important to be aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know that time should be considered in how we frame our policy, because not all students have access to those programs.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee?
Thank you. That was a nice presentation. I had only one question on if we are trying to serve different kind of parents and kids in the community, right? Why can't we have an option that we do provide homework, but it's optional, right? Because I think that there is a steep curve at some point, right? And the focus that they need to probably sit and get the homework done probably needs to start earlier. And you can probably tell me more about the studies, because I'm just generalizing. It's like if they have a hard, so I totally agree with the time to play, but I think it would be great if you could keep it optional so that parents who want to spend time, or at least get them into the habit and the discipline, that they could do that. Is there a reason why we wouldn't consider that, or does it work against the no homework policy? If there's research to share, that would be great.
I don't see anything in the policy that prevents a parent from doing anything they want.
Yeah, but when it comes from the schools, the kids take it more seriously. So something that the teacher can give, but it's optional. Okay, here is, something that you could work on based on what we did. If you feel like it, do it, and at that point it becomes, a choice instead of just taking away that maybe some kid is very interested in math and would benefit and would learn to engage in math at some point and would want to do it. So just something up for consideration.
Angie So, and I have an 8th grader and one graduate from AV school system. So it's kind of same line with the question. You mentioned about the student survey. Can you share the data that's from it, because that's 100% filled by student, and parents would be curious what's actually impact with them. So can you share that?
The homework data was part of a Challenge Success newsletter. I can't remember, Don, which month we did share that homework data, so we can pull it back up again. Even tonight while we're just sitting here, we can let you know. But we did share that homework data in one of our Challenge Success newsletters. Yeah.
And the other question is, especially for high school students, I think the primary challenge is the coordination between different subjects. They're all falling onto the same day, just happen. And how is that being addressed? And the other thing is, because the policy has it's different, we have a different policy now. And is that a hard, will the teacher or the students will be penalized? This is like a guideline, or how is that be implemented? Because that was in the details, and it really depends on how we implement it, and could you share some of the plan, how it's going to be implemented, and how is the coordination in the teachers and the workload, and how will be the student or the teacher be able to transition from the current school the workload to the future load? Is there a transition plan, or how is that going to work?
So I think you're talking specifically at the high school, and so that is the work for next year. They're looking at homework. The coordination piece, so there are a couple of things. So electronically, they're being able to use and coordinate when tests and quizzes are given. And one of the things that we found, I believe it was a couple of years ago in the survey, it was that it wasn't necessarily just homework that was students were talking about, it was assessments. And coordinating the number of assessments on a certain day was causing stress. And so even with the homework, the school policy, the handbook, there's a revision to go from 3 or more assessments on one day to be able to go down to 2. So that should relieve some of that stress for students there. But in terms of coordinating, that is something that they're working on. I know they're working on that at the junior high as well. But it is going to be a transition. It's certainly not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take some work to make that happen. The other thing that, both the junior high and the high school are looking at right now are different schedules, not for next year, but the year after. That will also have an impact on the homework and the tests and quizzes and when those are given. If there are fewer periods that meet through the day, there'll be fewer assignments that are given for each subject on a given night. So all of those things are part of the mix. It's all part of the discussion, but that's the work for next year.
Angie, that data was shared in the December. We've been sharing it right here. Hello. Hi. The voice from somewhere. We've been sharing little bits of challenge success data all along in our newsletters, but the specific things around homework and actually even the reference to changing the conversation, there's actually links to that article in the December version.
Thanks, John. I don't think they can hear you.
So if a teacher, every student has different level of needs, and there are teachers maybe see some students that may want or desire for more challenge. So will the teacher be penalized or anything performance-wise and be giving some students more homework or less, actually, because every student are different and they have different needs, and some needs more, some needs less.
Yeah, I think even now, and we're talking about the number of assignments that students are getting. The nature of those assignments and thinking about how we can engage students in the work at home even more than they are now, so they can bring that back to the classroom to be engaged in the work there. That's what we're looking at. It's not making it harder or easier. It's about it being really applicable to what they're learning in the classroom. And if it's applicable, they're going to be engaged and want to do that so they can come back. So, yeah.
I feel like I should say a couple things because a few of the questions have been high school related. For me, talking about a homework policy is half of a conversation. So it's partly about homework, but it's also about instruction. So the work that's happening at the high school is, and I want to go back to what Deanne said about 2 things. The math practice, you said something, and then what was the other point you made about equity? I know you can't remember. You're expecting me to remember. So she said, I know what it was. She said, she was talking about access to technology and equity. People who look at homework with an equity framework, a really strong equity framework, some of them argue that homework shouldn't happen at any level. or minimal homework should happen, because we can't ensure equity. So we don't operate from that lens here necessarily, but at the high school, we're really looking at the link between instruction and homework. So, you know, I think this policy is broad enough that we can all work with it. I think that it's detailed enough that it provides guidelines, but I want you to understand the amount of work that's happening outside of the homework policy. So we're looking at assessment closely. We're looking at how changing a homework policy and changing a high school schedule will change the way our teachers teach. So I think that's important to say, that this isn't just about, and that's why we back away from frequency. We back away from time. We don't talk about 30 minutes or 40 minutes, because that closes the conversation and narrows it. We're looking at, you know, what's important for our kids to learn, personalizing learning to the largest extent possible, and then having a framework around a homework policy that allows us to do that. Does that help a little bit? Okay.
Christine Marlowe from Boxborough. I just had a few questions. First of all, with the elementary school, I agree that you don't need a lot of homework, but like in second grade, that's when they start to learn their math, like their subtractions and addition and subtraction. And it was really important for my kids to come home with their homework so that we could work on it together. And so my concern is about that section, like are they going to be coming home with really important stuff, or is it going to be the teacher's responsibility to get that all in at the school during school time, and how is that going to affect what's being taught in the classroom, and you know, the child's not learning at home as well. So
So when we talked about an occasional activity that involves others, it would be exactly that. It would be a math game, an activity that reinforces the kinds of concepts that they're learning in school. But it doesn't necessarily mean a worksheet, because we don't think that that's appropriate for K2. It's that engagement that then they're learning their social skills as they're learning the concepts. And so an occasional activity can go home, and most math programs have games that children find fun and engaging, but they're learning at the same time.
the other thing, and that this has been brought up, but I have a more personal experience, and it's the reading, that you're not going to assign it in elementary school, and the creative reading. And I was one of the parents that came in, and the children were told to find a book and read it, and I was one of the parents that would come and talk to them about their book. And I just found like that assignment was so important, because just having that conversation with me, and I can remember this one young man, he was reading a book and he wasn't liking it, but he wanted to finish it, and he felt so proud of himself that he did finish it, and it was a really good moment when it happened. So I understand what you're saying, but on the other hand, I think that it is important to have that assignment, and teaching them how to find fun books, and teaching them that they can stop if it's not good is still an important thing. But I don't think we should stop assigning that. That's okay. And then one final thing. Sorry. The long holidays and the vacations, what I've found, because it's supposed to be homework-free weekends and all that right now in the high school and everything, but what happens is they may not have assigned anything specifically, but the kids have a ton of stuff to do. So we don't have that weekend. There was the Memorial Day weekend, and there was a test on Wednesday. I mean, that was on my child's mind, and she was studying over the weekend. So I don't know how you're going to ever really give us the homework-free weekends and vacations, to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I think everything you said about the importance of teaching children to find books that they love and all is extremely important. That's going to continue to happen. The way I envision this is we're no longer going to say in second grade every student's required to read a book of their choice for 15 minutes every night and keep a journal. Instead, we're going to continue to encourage the child to read, encourage families to read with their children as well. It's going to be a strong message that continues to come home every day, but we're going to take that little, it has to be 15 minutes off so parents don't get into the habit of, you know, great, you did your math, now go read for 15 minutes. We want to make sure there's a family connection to it. Okay?
Let me let her go first.
So I don't have a question. I have a comment. First, thank you for this presentation. It's really thorough. And two things that I would like to comment about this. I like the way it's general and still has guidelines. And I think that it will give a lot of room to our teachers in the district to test, play with it a little bit, because you know that needs to happen, and see what works best for the children and for different groups of children, because they will change as they go. And the second thing is I'm a teacher in an independent school, and we have been not having homework, or having really limited homework for older children for many years now. And I can tell you how it looks at the end when kids go to high school, and it's that they're engaged, they are really invested in their education, and they are also achieving academically. So it's one thing doesn't erase the other. Actually, both of my children who went to that school are here, and they're achieving according to the definition of the district and the culture of this town. So it is really a great opportunity for children to start going out, even those older children, playing and failing, because they're trying things in their own terms. And that is an opportunity that it will be great for our children to have. So thank you for that.
So is there going to, how are we going to monitor that this is successful once we do change it? Like, what will we be looking for to say, you know, my biggest concern is a child starting in elementary school not having homework a little bit, so that by the time they get to junior high and high school, they have a routine and they know what to do. So what are we going to use to just monitor that this has been a successful thing and there aren't things we need to do differently?
So a couple of things come to mind. So first, you know, our teachers talking with their children and really looking to see around some of the self-regulation skills and the social emotional skills that we've been trying to teach in the K-2. We do actually have some baseline data that we used when we did the Early Childhood Initiative, reaching out to our nurses and our pediatricians and our school nurses and our teachers, and we were seeing very high signs of stress among our children. That was reported by our pediatricians, our local pediatricians and nurses as well. So we can be reaching back to them to see how things might have changed with this. For the intermediate grades, certainly with principals and teachers, one of the things we know is that teachers have to ask their students for feedback as part of the educator evaluation process. That could be one thing. How are you feeling and thinking about it? Because we do want to make sure we incorporate that wellness piece in this. But we also have our own internal assessments that we use. And so would there be any major changes, say in our benchmark reading assessments or in our math assessments that we do internally to see where our students and how they're working and how they're learning. And then again, we have the Challenge Success Survey, which we can re-administer next year or the year after to see where that baseline and see how that's moved. And that was besides the homework, there are many categories that we were looking at, so we can see if we've moved the dial in that way. So we have lots of different things that we can look to see how successful it was. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Deb, really. Thank you very much. And thank you, Damien and Joanne, for coming up and answering questions. I'm going to turn over the microphones.
We are moving on to, at this point, item number 12, which is the presentation of the school start time committee report. For members of the audience, as well as those watching at home, uploaded on the district website now is the school start time report that was put together by the school start time committee. You can find that both as part of the packet as well as separately on the section of the webpage around school start time. The slide pack that's used this evening has been built based upon that report, and we will upload that as well too. I don't think that that has yet been posted. As a context setting for this, we go back a little bit in time to the 2015-16 school year. And hopefully many recall that the Superintendent's Wellness Committee at that point in time closely examined the issue of school start times, and specifically the intersection of school start times with student health and well-being. That presentation was made in June of 2016 to the school committee, and that report has certainly been cited many times over, but it is a great report. If you have not, as a member of the community, had a chance to take a look at that, it remains posted on our website. Specifically at that point in time, the recommendation that came from that report was that I, as the superintendent, would look into and further explore how, as a school system, we could change our school start times. That was, in turn, one of the many goals of which I had established for this school year, and so the School Start Time Committee is the result of that work that is taken the course of the year. I'm going to start and do the bulk of this presentation, then I'm going to turn it over to Marie, who will share the conclusions and recommendations. In overview, the strategies of the School Start Time Committee, you can see, as outlined in this slide, it provided a little bit more detail within the body of the report. The formation of an internal working group that would specifically look at options, as well as financial costs, and then from there identify any implications or necessary changes that, as a school system, we would have to explore, and then the wider stakeholder group, which you'll see the members of in just a moment. I'm going to go through these slides rather quickly, just in the interest of time. I know it is late, and we want to get to the recommendations herein. Through October to December of this school year, the working group that's outlined, the members are on this slide, and again, all of this comes from the report, began exploring our various options and where we are right now as a school system with 3 tiers, and working upon, or with rather, the variables that we have. We have a very complex very complex transportation system, an awful lot of resources necessary to transport an awful lot of students over a wide geography. It is a challenge. It is not an easy system to manipulate, and it's far more complex perhaps than some might think, as I've had a chance to certainly come to learn. The Start Time Committee was formed to do a number of things, and this outlines the purpose of that, the foundation of the committee to explore various start times options, to gather community feedback, and ultimately brings us to this point in time, making recommendations to the school committee and to the community. The members, many of which are here. In the interest of time, I won't introduce them, but I thank them for both being here tonight as well as their time and energy that spanned a good number of months. You can see the members here. This captures the members of the committee that were broken down into further subcommittee or subgroups rather, and those included the outreach, the various scenarios and option development, research and education, and communications. And you can see those members. Hopefully, members of the community and the committee certainly are well aware of the fact that we had a great response rate to the outreach effort, the data collection instrument that was used, and a total of 2,693 responses across a number of different demographic groups. This slide shows that breakdown. Parents, guardians totaled 2,109, or 78% of the total responses. Staff represented 15%. Parent, guardians, and staff, of which we certainly have many. Some community members who don't have students in the system right now also responded, again, for that total of 2,693. There were a number of goals that collectively were built upon, or of which the survey, was built upon, and I won't go through them all here, but certainly this effort was to try and gauge the support and the perspectives and views of our stakeholders throughout the school system. There were a number of questions. Hopefully, if you had a chance to take the survey, you will recall this. There were a number of questions. Great thought went into the design of this survey, and I can say anecdotally, an awful lot of positive feedback that was gathered based upon the survey, its ease, and the sharing of information in which it did. There were multiple choice questions throughout the survey. There were open response questions as well, and the data from all of those were certainly captured in the report. A summary of the survey questions and responses. First off, it goes without saying that there is, based upon this response that we have, broad support for changing the start times. The majority respondents, from a long list of items, listed student well-being as an important and driving factor that they based that decision or recommendation on. We had 4 models or options that were proposed, and all of them ranked higher than the current structure of our times that we have in place right now. 3 of the 4 options were essentially, based upon the data, tied as a first choice, and option 3 was selected by fewer total respondents. 9% of the respondents felt that the start time in the current model was desirable going forward. The willingness to support costs of 2-tier busing, as described in the report, as described in the survey, as I think many members know, this is a big factor to consider when we're talking about changing our start times and moving from essentially what we call a 3-tier system. We often refer to it as single tier. It would not be. It would be a 2-tier system. Right now we run a 3-tier system, but it's understandable that many people call it a single tier with reference specifically to the elementary level. 78% of the respondents indicated a willingness to support the costs of changing 2-tier busing through a variety of approaches, and they are provided here. Again, in the interest of time, I won't go through all of them, but you can see the breakdown and the manner in which we tried to capture feedback on that. The factors, I referenced one of these earlier, that most influenced the responses. The top 2 were student health and well-being, as mentioned earlier. 84% of the respondents indicated such. And impact on student sleep was also a very prominent driving force behind the thought of changing. The next 4 are outlined there that you can see as part of the considerations. So the survey highlights by section, and a lot of data with some nice graphics that help try and support this and showcase what this looked like. But first off, option 1 and 2 was the first part of the survey, and you can see what the corresponding times are within these various options. Junior high and high school is the JH and HS, of course, and that would be a shift to 7:50 to 2:26. And then these 2 options still run with what we would call right now a triple tier, 3-tier model. And you can see the overall preference of 55.3% for option number 1 based upon these 2 options. Option 1 or 2, you can see, and I'm sorry, I should have backed up. That first one was the overall total of responses. This is broken down by staff. Again, I'll quickly go through these. This is by parent-guardian responses, again, taking a closer look at option 1 in comparison to option 2. Option 1 or 2, or the current schedule, or what will be the 2017-18 schedule, is what this specific question and the respective data captured here. And you can see that by a slight margin, 41.9% would have preferred option 1 in comparison to option 2 at 40.7%. That drops down to 17.5% if the current schedule or what will be next year's schedule was at play. The next couple of slides, again, in the interest of time, I'll skip over, but this breaks down the data according to parents, guardians, and staff for that same question. Still a little bit more on option 1 or option 2. The 2-tier options is what this next section of the report and the respective presentation gets into. And this identifies option 3. And in the proposal or the scenario, it had elementary starting at 7:50 through 2:20, and the junior high and high school starting at 8:30 through until 3:06 and 3:10 respectively. And then option 4 was somewhat of a flip of that, with junior high and high school starting at 8 o'clock and ending at 2:26 or 2:40, a little bit of gap of time there, and elementary starting at 8:40 to 3:10. That pie chart shows the respective weighting of the responses, with 57.4% of the respondents preferring option 4 over option 3. Again, in the interest of time, I'll skip over these next ones, which was staff, and we'll go to section C. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Marie.
Okay, so on this slide, as Glenn had said, 78% of residents taking the survey indicated they would support funding a two-tier model by some means. And we're talking about three-tier and two-tier. Three-tier is our current busing with one junior high, high school schedule and two elementary schedules that flip every other year. So what we're talking about here is if we were able to go to a single elementary tier, so one schedule for all 6 elementary schools and a different schedule for the junior high, high school. There's a cost impact on that, which was included in the survey, and I have some details up here about. So there are trade-offs for this, but 78%, looking at the costs as they were outlined in the survey, people said that they would support funding a two-tier model by some means. And then this breaks out budgetary considerations of the two-tier models by all respondents, parents, guardians, staff, and community members. Again, 78% support the two-tier model, and you can see either through reallocation of funds in the current budget or through some combination of reallocating funds and or increase in the assessment. And about 20% or so would not support the budgetary reallocation of funds for the two-tier model. There was a lot of the data that you've seen so far compare the two options that have 3 tiers, the two options that have 2 tiers. This was, please pick your first choice of 5 options. And of the 5 options, the data is not clear. It was very split. So roughly 25% of people liked each of 3 of the options. The only thing that's really clear about this is the current schedule is not preferred. So 9, 11, 14%. That's 7:23 in the morning thing. So when given all the choices, people are kind of all over the place. But when you're picking between 2 choices, it was more clear, like in the 60-40 range. The factors influencing ranking decisions were very clear: student health and well-being and impact on sleep. 70, 80%, 85%, depending on the group. The next thing below that is athletics at 20%, and after-school care at 18%, morning care at 16%. So roughly 20% of the people who responded were worried about athletics and before and after-school care, and 80 to 85% were talking about health and well-being and student sleep. This is another way to pull that same data, and it's very consistent. So when you separate elementary parents, junior high, high school, elementary staff, and junior high, high school staff, it's still quite consistent around student health and well-being, impact on student sleep, in the 80 to 85 range. The only exception to that, which is kind of interesting, is elementary staff worried about sleep was at the 65% range, where the elementary schedules start at 8:30 and 9:15. And then again, athletics and before and after school care in the 20 to 25% range. This is more data around influencing the ranking decisions, and this is breaking it out by first choice. So people who picked first choice as options 1 or 4. Options 1 and 4 were the 2 most popular when people had to pick one option. And they're both options that keep the junior high, high school earlier than the elementary. All right? And again, any way you look at it, impact on student health and wellness and impact on sleep. All right, so This question, the next 2 or 3 slides interpret the qualitative data. So we had, I think, 40 or so pages of comments, and we counted that up and coded it and so on. And so you can kind of see this, like Glenn did. I'm going to go through kind of quickly. I'll just say this, it's very late. There's a ton of data here. There's an extensive report. So I think we're not going to be able to process it all tonight. So I would say this is sort of our first present it, discuss it, take the time to read through that extensive report. We'll post these slides, which are pulled from the report, and then I would say we definitely need to have further discussion at another time once people have had time to process it. So this one lists kind of the qualitative data, 276 comments. The themes, about 20% of the people were talking about impact on parent work schedule, commute traffic. 15% were talking about before and after school activities, athletics, homework, etc. There were comments that we don't want the elementary school schedules to flip-flop, don't want elementary to start too early. 5% of people said keep times as they are. And then to keep going with the open responses, there were other comments mentioned. There were some comments about eliminating school choice, comments about schools not being responsible for what happens at home, multiple children on different schedules and what that impact would be, and the fact that in our current schedule there's a large gap for different kids at different ages. Talks about scheduling things and so on, health and well-being, and high schoolers missing the bus after parents have gone to work. So quite a bit in the open response. 23% our children's mental and emotional health needs need to be the top priority. We need to make this happen. That were 144 comments within that theme. 14 people asked if we could do it for this September. We cannot. We need to make a real shift, not just 15 or 20 minutes. 90 people, thank you to the district for doing this. It's not easy. 48 comments, desire for single-tier elementary, and to eliminate the flip-flopping of the early-late schedule at the elementary. 40 comments related to costs in all directions. Some said costs need to be controlled, spend money on education, not more transportation, no new taxes. But then if districts can build fields that can pay for this important change, the building project, etc. 32 comments, later start time good for secondary, but please consider impact on elementary. Not too early, not too late. Skepticism that the change will do anything about teen sleep habits. There were 30 comments like that. 25, consider eliminating school choice. And 14, keep things the same. So that was clear, right? All right, and so now these are kind of smaller responses around the qualitative. I'm not going to go into all of that. All right, after all of that, what's the recommendation? Back on the data charts, you would see the clearest thing we had was that people were strongly in favor of going to a single elementary tier of busing, stopping the flip-flopping, and within the choices that had that, option 4, it was roughly 60-40, 65-35, depending on the group, preferred option 4 to option 3. Option 3 flip-flopped elementary first. Option 4 keeps junior high, high school first. And if we could do this, there's a monetary impact, which I'll talk about in a minute. The high school schedule would be 8 a.m. to 2:40. The junior high would be 8 a.m. to 2:36. And the elementary would be 8:40 to 3:10, which is roughly in the middle of where the two elementary tiers are now. So this option was felt to actually improve things for all kids K to 12. It's better for elementary than what we have now. It's better for junior high and high school. So this is the option being recommended to the committee. There's still more time to be spent on this, outreach, feedback, etc., discussion. So this is not by any means a decision. This is just this part of the process. The committee The survey data is one piece of it, all the research is another piece of it, and this is what the committee agreed was the best option. However, there are budgetary implications. So at the April school committee meeting, there was a long presentation about single-tier busing going onto one elementary schedule. And in brief summary, in order to do that, we'd have to have 11 additional buses, 11 additional drivers. And the way that it works, in the first year we do it, there's a higher cost, because once we've done it for a year, the state reimburses actually quite a large percentage of our transportation costs. It's 72% of our transportation costs are reimbursed by the state. And it's 72% of 72% because it's based on ridership. So it's kind of a complicated thing. So it really comes out to about, I think, 59% of our kids. But anyway, so the first year it would cost $750,000. That's a huge investment. The ongoing cost starting in the second year would be $375,000. So the committee has a lot to think about here. So the recommended option includes this change. We need to figure out if it's affordable. One possible funding strategy would be that you gradually increase the budget over those 2 years, and then you take a one-time money out of E&D to pay for that sort of one-time cost. So in 2018-2019, the budget could be increased by $175,000. $575,000 would come out of E&D, your reserve fund, on a one-time basis. And then in the next year, you'd have to increase the budget another $200,000. It's quite a commitment. It's a lot to think about. You're going to learn later tonight that we actually have quite a bit going into E&D at the end of this year. But I just wanted to kind of put it in context of how much money we're talking about and where it could potentially come from. The other question that we've looked at when we've looked at moving to a single elementary schedule is, could we actually staff the number of drivers? Currently we have 34 drivers on staff. This is 11 more. And what we've been talking about is potentially outsourcing part of the transportation function. So rather than increase 11 buses and 11 drivers on staff here, we could actually have a contract for 11 buses and 11 drivers, and then we divide up the operation in whatever way makes the most sense. Maybe Boxborough kids are done by a contractor, Acton kids are done by the district buses. Maybe it's regional. JD has some great ideas about how to do that, and as you know, we had a transportation consultant work with us through all of this. Okay, it's late. There's a lot of information there. There is broad support for making a change to start times, with 84% of respondents indicating student health and wellness, 77% indicating impact on sleep as the primary reasons. The research strongly supports a change to improve wellness for junior high and high school kids. Also strong support for moving to single-tier elementary busing. And 78% of respondents said they'd support a two-tier model by some means. So that's a lot of information. I'll take a seat. Glenn and I are happy to answer questions.
So I wanted to ask the committee, considering the timing and the denseness of this information, would you be willing, or could we put this discussion off till the June 22nd meeting so that all of us have a chance to kind of go through all the data and digest it and really spend some time thinking about our options and so forth? Yes.
The only thing is there probably are audience members who have comments and questions, so I don't know if we want to do like a quick survey of the committee. I think we'll be talking about this a lot for a long time.
Yeah. No, yeah. So is there a general sense that as a committee we would kind of hold our discussions and maybe address a couple of the public, or do you want to have a quick conversation?
I just I just have a very quick one. I don't know if I hate to throw out some new things there. I remember at April meeting, I really I mean this option 4, which is the committee recommended right now, that one is really my favorite, which is 2-tier system. However, I remembered when we had a meeting in April, Christina really talked about the budget. I really did not realize that until really recently studied this a lot. Even that number 4 is a really favorite. I don't know if it's that possible for us to implement that in 2 steps. First step, maybe next year, we can start with option 1, which is 750, still 3 tiers, but start with 750 high school and junior high, and without budget increasing. And then we probably need to have survey, not just for our parents, to be fair enough for the whole Boxborough, Acton resident. They do not have any children in the school system. Of course, we have, most of us, we have, we're willing to pay all those increasing budget or this and that. But what about the whole community, Acton resident, Boxborough resident at large? So I think we may do that in 2 steps. That's just, the new idea. Okay, thank you.
So I think that's, unless committee members have a different thought, I think that's a thought that we should keep in the back of our minds as we think about it for the next 2 weeks, and can keep that in what you just suggested, and then come back on the 22nd and have a more detailed, in-depth conversation. Am I getting a sense that the committee agrees to that? No? Yes?
I mean, I agree to it. My only concern is June 22nd is the last day of school. And, we want community feedback, and I don't know how many parents are going to be heading over to a school committee meeting on the last day. Yeah. But we have other agenda items as well on June 22nd. We just keep throwing everything to that meeting.
We do, so it's up to what you all think.
I'm fine with having a discussion June 22nd, but I think the folks that are interested in commenting now, I'd like to hear their questions from us.
Okay, well then I'm going to turn over to public comment.
I'm Laura Krieger. I have a couple of questions, and one is that when I have done the research, I was really interested in this. I keep also thinking about the cost savings that we would have by moving the time, mental health, inpatient, we pay for the tutoring that goes there, even counselors, and I haven't seen that quantified at all. That might be interesting, especially when we're concerned about, expenditures for moving to single-tier elementary schools, because that's got to be significant, and even to the community, car accidents, drugs, alcohol, all those things that will cost us, even if it might not be direct education costs, the cost of the whole community might go down with some of the results of the better sleep schedules. And also I know there were many committees and groups who did all this research, and I know they must have read all the general research also, but what we're seeing is the presentation of the community survey. And so I'd like to know a little bit more about, we're not responding just to that, I would assume. It's to, a lot more input than that. And then as a parent of 3 elementary school kids, I cringe when I saw that 7:30 possible time or the 9:30 possible start time for them. But I also feel like with what I've learned about the schedules for the junior high and high school kids, I could I'll suck it up and deal with it. And it's more important for the older kids to have the right time. And everywhere that I read, the AMA, AAP, the CDC, APA, all those, they all say 8:30 or later is the recommended time. And so when I looked at the 8 o'clock time, which would feel more convenient and definitely easier for me as a parent of elementary school kids, I also thought, are we just doing a halfway of solution? Will we just revisit it in 5 years and think we didn't do enough? So just how are we balancing that that information, that input with maybe what the community said and what's really best for the students. Thanks.
Ripley Martin, Barker Road, again, sorry. So I have two questions. I don't anticipate getting answers to them now, but I think it would be helpful for framing subsequent dialogue on the topic. Number one is the interdependency between this survey and initiative and the capital planning survey and initiative, and the complexity of the network relative to what transportation plans would look like within that network. Recognizing that the more nodes you have in that network, the more complicated the transportation network looks like, and thereby the cost impact. The other element would be taking that question and saying, are there other simplifying assumptions that we could collectively make as a community that would help us understand how we can get an objective, which it sounds like is important for the community, around getting clear standard start times, but potentially trading that off for other things that we have historically viewed as important in the community. And what the trade-off across those things are, recognizing that the third option is always cost. And we can always just say add elements and add cost and add complexity. So I'll take that offline. And if anybody has comments now, that'd be helpful.
I've written everything down, and I think that we'll definitely keep both of those comments as we go forward. Thank you. Okay, it looks like you're up, Marie. Maybe? Yeah.
This is the annual vote on the Administrator Benefits Manual, which we gave you a link to it. The only change in it is the date, the non-discrim, an update on the non-discrimination policy, and there's one title change. So the booklet has a list of all the positions covered by the manual, and there was a recommendation from Dr. Brand to change the title of the Director of Transportation, the Director of Facilities and Transportation, to the Director of School Operations. So that's one title change in that booklet, effective July 1, and we would ask for the committee to vote on the updated Administrator Benefits Manual.
Any comments? Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Clare.
Thank you. As part of our normal procurement process every year, we participate in a collaborative bid with, a cooperative bid with Tech, the Ed Cooperative. And we do that in certain categories. As you see in your packet, it's for paper products, groceries, vending, bread products, milk and milk products. And by doing this, we facilitate the procurement process for the coming year and are assured of getting the best possible prices. So we'd be looking for, I think, approval of us entering into this bid award for fiscal 18.
Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
I'll move to approve.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? So that was unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 15 is the Acton-Boxborough Regional High School Handbook for 2017-18, and that memo, again, from Peter Kavanaugh is included in your packet. This evening is what will be a second read and a hopeful vote of approval so that the handbook can be moved forward and formalized for the high school for next school year.
Discussion around the handbook? Yes.
So the only piece to be aware of is if we change our homework policy, it's going to impact the handbook. So if we vote to approve this, it should be conditioned that any changes will be updated in the handbook.
Yes, Beth.
So there's motion wording to that effect? Do you want me to read it, or?
it on the table?
It's not, I'm sorry, you and I have it.
Oh, why don't you read it?
Okay.
I move to approve the Acton-Boxborough Regional High School Handbook as presented with updates to be included once the homework policy is voted.
All those in favor? Opposed and abstention. Okay, unanimous. Now it's the recommendation to approve the solar net metering credit agreement. Do you want to speak to this? I don't.
Very briefly, JD has talked about this before. Again, the memo that outlines this proposed opportunity is before you. This is with Altus Power America. This is a second read and looking for your vote of approval to move into this agreement.
I'll move to approve.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed, abstentions. It's unanimous. Okay, so,
Item number 17, there is a memo that is included in your packet, and it provides an update on year-end projections. I've worked with Clare on this, and we've also had the opportunity, as outlined in the memo, to talk at more length with the Budget Subcommittee around where projections currently look to stand for the end of the fiscal year. Also within that discussion, as outlined in the memo, there are a few items that have surfaced for which I would like to move forward with your support to front-load some of the capital items that were identified as part of and included rather, in the FY18 budget. And by doing so, and there's a couple here that are outlined, the truck, for example, Blanchard boilers, by moving those out of 18 into this current year's budget, that will free up some capacity, financial capacity within next year's budget, such that we can move into those placeholders, if you will, the next items of priority in the capital list. There are a couple of other items as outlined here that have also emerged based upon my conversations with administrators. I wanted to make the school committee as well as the respective community aware of the plan. There was general support from the Budget Subcommittee members, so I thought I'd bring this to you for any other feedback or discussion.
Katie?
On the Blanchard boilers, I know we were going to look to see if we could get MSBA grant funding. Does doing this now affect our ability to apply for that grant?
So I know that JD has talked about possibility of grants not through MSBA. I don't believe they were, so it would not. We would still pursue those, like we did for the junior high project here 2 years ago, I think it was.
Any other comments from the committee? Oh, okay. Well, what am I looking for, Beth? Any kind of a vote? No action. Okay.
So I'll just say I support this. I think it's a good fiscal move to make with all this thing.
I would say exactly the same thing. I think this is a really exactly what we should be doing with this. Okay, so subcommittee reports, budget. Christina?
I'd like to ask if I can update the committee on this at our next meeting. I don't have the minutes with me and I can't remember the details.
Sure. Bridget, policy?
Sure. Policy, the first one's the homework policy, which we've already talked about under item number 7. The next one is the website accessibility policy, which Dawn is going to cover.
So now the most important thing on the agenda tonight. Kidding. So as I shared in our last meeting with the memo and a bit of a timeline for you, the very first step in the resolution agreement that we reached with, we proposed to the Office of Civil Rights around the website accessibility is for the school committee to review, develop, and approve a policy around website accessibility. So that is basically what this does. The next piece in our timeline, that is due by June 30th. And the next piece in our timeline would happen on August 1st when they expect that notice, which is really the procedural piece of this. So if folks have concerns or need to bring something forward, how would they do that if they had concerns about accessibility around the website, which is really contained in the second piece of it, which is ACE-R, on the third page of the pieces in front of you. So a lot of the language, almost all of the language in the policy piece is very specifically actually from the resolution agreement. So some of it sounds sort of technical, but it's really out of the resolution agreement. So I'll take any questions that you might have.
So I noticed it referenced making new and modified material accessible, but not existing material. And so on the one hand, fiscally, that's great, but on the other hand, accessibility-wise, it's not. I can see it being very slow-moving because a lot of things don't change fast. Is that a concern? Would we look to update some of that other material, especially the really heavily used material, faster than just waiting for a modification?
So all of the content has to be accessible. The priority at this point, though, is the new and the modified moving forward, because the OCR recognizes that we have 673 web pages, individual pages, right? And so there's quite a bit of work to be done around that. And so really focusing on the newer things with the backfill. Amy and I have been working with a lot of companies, as we shared last time, and one of the first things we'll do after we port all of our things over to a new site would be to run an accessibility scan so that we really understand what's up. And then we have to create a corrective action plan anyhow, and that would be greatly determined by what we find in the plan. We were on a call with a company the other day, and we have like 7,000 PDFs that aren't accessible, as an example. So those to me, and Beth, certainly as we've been talking about school committee policy and other things, we put a lot of PDFs out there and with information for folks. So how are those accessible? So we certainly will develop from that a corrective action plan that over the next 18 to 24 months, we'd be working closely with OCR to make sure that our timelines make sense, but to kind of pick away at that over time.
Thank you.
Quick question. Any sense, Dawn, of cost? What
A
this will
lot.
cost?
Quite honestly, Amy and I are still very much in the beginning phases of that. It's looking anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 for the website. The auditing software is another $5,000 to $10,000 a year. I mean, it will have a substantial price tag. And then to the degree, once we port everything over, what it looks like, and how much back-end work and other types of work that's going to take. So some of it, I think, we'll be kind of discovering along the way, but we hope to have a much better estimate for you in the next few weeks.
Dean.
So since we are modifying the website, we're going to look at usability? Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. The only companies we're looking at are ones that have templates that they consider 100% accessible. And by that, they don't mean necessarily that when we bring everything over, poof, it's fixed, because they still, what they'll do, there's 3 different pieces to accessibility, and one of them is readability. And so they actually run Flesch-Kincaid reading scores on all of the pieces to determine, and we have a lot of pages on our site right now that are written at the collegiate level or above. And so that'll be like, when we think about that corrective action plan, while that is important, it's not going to be the most important. The most important is going to be some of the basic, can people with visual impairments,
Well, yeah, but so there's also usability in regards to finding stuff.
Yes.
So, right, and how that website's laid out. So that's
Absolutely.
all going
It's
to be
huge,
included.
yes.
Thanks.
Okay, very quickly, items number 20, 21, and 22 we will do individually, but looking for your vote of approval for a number of gifts or donations. Firstly, item number 20 we will start with, and that is an anonymous gift to both the Acton-Boxborough Nordic Ski Team as well as the Acton Boys Lacrosse Team. A memo from Steve Martin, the athletic director, is included in your packet and outlines the proposal for how those funds would be used. Looking for your vote of acceptance this evening.
Move to approve with gratitude.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Thank you very much. Item number 21 is a gift from MassQ. It's a grant donation to the Acton-Boxborough Regional School Department's Ed Tech Department for $2,889. The memo that's included in your packet outlines the proposal for how that grant would be broken up and used. That includes both Apple MacBook Airs as well as some software. So looking again for this item for your vote of acceptance.
Move to approve?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Thank you very much. Item number 22, lastly, again, looking for your vote of acceptance as outlined for $1,495, a donation from the ABRPTSO to the junior high school. There's a memo from Mr. Shannon, the principal, outlining how and to which end that grant would go. Looking for your vote of acceptance this evening.
Move to approve with gratitude?
Second.
Sorry.
You got to be really fast.
Sorry. It's
All right,
late.
all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, item number 23, the summer workshop and August business meeting. Do you have updates, or should I just ask committee members?
I didn't hear from two people. I don't know if we, it's looking like the July date will be Thursday, July 13th.
Okay.
Not everybody can come, but, you know.
Okay, is that something that you think we can vote on now, or do you want to wait until the June 22nd meeting to actually make a final vote?
If it's all the same, I would prefer to wait.
Okay.
But people should probably hold some of these dates then, because that gets us pretty close to.
Yeah, so it would be, yeah, if you guys could, if you can be there on any of these 4 dates, and you've already said that you can, if you could just block those off until we actually make the final vote, that would be great. There's July 13th, July 11th, Tuesday, July 11th, Tuesday, August 1st, or Monday, August the 7th. And it went out in a doodle poll, so, okay.
I'm not going to identify the two that didn't do that.
No.
I'll follow up.
Okay, no, it's fine. Okay, Superintendent. Oh, okay. Christina, I realize I skipped over your outreach. I'm so sorry.
And I was just going to say, there's nothing to report, but
Okay,
thank you.
Good, good. Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn? He said he didn't have anything. No, I asked him. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?